Chapter 1061. Who's this old man? Chu Fengmian ignored the old man's roar and asked Lu Yi instead. He's an elder of the Radiant Heaven sect, Xiao Hua. He's Sun Yan's master. Lu Yi replied respectfully. Why aren't you kneeling down after committing a capital offense? Lu Yi, you deserve to die. You're out of control. Xiao Hua's expression became even more furious when he saw Lu Yi ignoring him. Looks like there's no need to wait for the sect master's judgment. This old man will kill you on behalf of the Radiant Heaven sect. As he spoke, Xiao Hua directly grabbed Lu Yi with his palm. His finger was covered in a blood-red color. It was a peerless killing technique. It could kill in one strike. His 5 fingers turned into 5 rays of blood-red light that shot towards Lu Yi. Oh, and here I thought you were? You're just an elder of the Radiant Heaven sect. If you were the sect master of the Radiant Heaven sect, I would have said a few words to you. A mere elder doesn't even have the qualifications to carry my shoes. How dare you touch my people? Chu Fengmian sneered in disdain when he saw Xiao Hua's attack. Die! Chu Fengmian spat out the word die, which contained the 8 tian-long note. Xiao Hua's body in the air suddenly froze. Then, a crack appeared on his chest. His body exploded in the air, turning into a cloud of blood mist. He died on the spot without leaving a corpse behind. What? Elder Xiao Hua is dead? What kind of technique is this? He killed Elder Xiao Hua with a single word? A demonic technique. This is definitely a demonic technique. A demon has come to deal with our Radiant Heaven sect. Calamity. This is a calamity. Quickly call for the experts of the Desolate Region Alliance. Some of the Radiant Heaven sect's disciples shouted when they saw this scene. However, most of them were trembling. An old ancestor who had stepped into the life and death steps was killed by a single word. Such a technique was beyond their imagination. What's going on? What happened? Several streaks of light flew out from the back of the mountain. These streaks of light were the elders of the Radiant Sky sect. The sect master of the Radiant Sky sect was among them. Su Tianjin, who had been injured by Chu Fengmian, was also among them. The injuries on Su Tianjin's body had already recovered. His strength had even improved a step further, reaching the peak of the Divine Force realm. It seemed that the Radiant Heaven sect had spent a lot of effort not only to heal Su Tianjin's injuries, but also to improve his cultivation. Lu Yi, you actually dare to come back? When Su Tianjin saw Lu Yi and Chu Fengmian, his eyes were filled with resentment. If Lu Yi hadn't brought Chu Fengmian to the Radiant Heaven sect, he wouldn't have been severely injured in front of everyone. Master, he's the one who injured me. Now, he's provoking the Brilliant Heaven sect. Please take action with the elders and suppress him to show the Brilliant Heaven sect's might. Su Tianjin hurriedly said to the Brilliant Heaven sect's sect master and the other elders. He's the one who injured you? A middle-aged man in luxurious clothes suddenly looked at Chu Fengmian when he heard that. His eyes flickered as if he was checking Chu Fengmian's cultivation. This person was the sect master of the Brilliant Heaven sect. He looked at Chu Fengmian a few times before withdrawing his gaze. He couldn't sense the slightest trace of spiritual energy from Chu Fengmian. However, since Chu Fengmian was able to stand in the air, he clearly wasn't an ordinary person. He should have a cultivation technique that concealed his cultivation. Who are you? Why have you come to the Brilliant Heaven sect? Although our Brilliant Heaven sect isn't a large sect, we're not a sect that anyone can bully. Please give us an explanation. The sect master of the Brilliant Heaven sect looked at Chu Fengmian. His expression suddenly changed and became calm. No one could tell what his current mood was. However, from his words, one could tell that the Brilliant Heavenly sect's sect master was furious. After all, as the sect master of a sect, he wouldn't be in a good mood when someone came knocking on his door. This was a challenge to the dignity of the entire Brilliant Heaven sect. The elders standing behind the sect master of the Brilliant Heaven sect didn't say anything. They were all sizing up Chu Fengmian with murderous intent in their eyes. They were all accumulating their strength. Once they attacked, they would kill Chu Fengmian with a thunderous force. Explain. There's nothing to explain about this Chu Fengmian's actions, Chu Fengmian said indifferently. As for who I am, you don't need to know. Those who offend me will all die. What a boastful tone. Those who offend you will all die. Do you think you're an immortal realm's supreme ancestor with a noble status? Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, an elder of the Brilliant Heaven sect couldn't help but speak. However, before he could finish his words, the Brilliant Heaven sect's elder suddenly looked around, carefully sizing up the surroundings. What's going on? Where did Elder Xiao Hua go? Didn't Elder Xiao Hua leave the rear mountain ahead of time? Where's he? Hearing the Brilliant Heaven sect's elder's words, the other elders also looked around. Even the sect master of the Brilliant Heaven sect's expression began to change. It suddenly became incomparably gloomy. He's gone. There's no longer any trace of Elder Xiao Hua's aura in the Brilliant Heaven sect. Xiao Hua? That trash offended me. I've already killed him. Chu Fengmian spoke casually, as if it was as simple as crushing an ant. You've killed him? You're the one who killed Elder Xiao Hua. Looking at the Brilliant Heaven sect's disciples who were still trembling below, the elders' eyes were suddenly filled with boundless killing intent as they looked at Chu Fengmian. Even the sect master of the Brilliant Heaven sect, who had been keeping a calm expression, was now filled with killing intent. He could no longer conceal it. If Chu Fengmian's words were a provocation, then killing an elder of the Brilliant Heaven sect in the Brilliant Heaven sect was an insult to them. This was an insult to the Radiant Heaven sect. They didn't place the Radiant Heaven sect in their eyes at all. It seems that you don't intend to give us an explanation today. In that case, please stay in the Brilliant Heaven sect. The Brilliant Heaven sect's sect master suddenly shouted coldly. Move. Activate the Grand Formation and suppress this person. Yes. The other elders had already accumulated their power. When the Brilliant Heaven sect's sect master spoke, spiritual energy that filled the sky erupted and shot into the sky. A grand formation condensed above the Brilliant Heaven sect. This grand formation was simply on a completely different level compared to the grand formation outside. It was extremely ancient and contained powerful energy that surpassed the immortal realm. Senior Chu, be careful. This is the Brilliant Heaven sect's grand formation passed down since the ancient era. Lu Yi hurriedly warned when she saw the grand formation appear. Chapter 1062. Damn it, Lu Yi, you're really a traitor. You wasted so many resources of the Radiant Heaven sect to nurture you. You should have been expelled from the sect long ago, but you actually helped an outsider. Traitor. A Radiant Heaven sect elder's eyes turned cold when he heard Lu Yi's words. Resources? I didn't even get a single elixir when I came to the Radiant Heaven sect. Even my cultivation technique is of the lowest grade. I took all the elixirs I got. Lu Yi couldn't help but retort. Compared to the other disciples, she didn't even get a single elixir. Being able to cultivate to the Divine Sea realm was already a result of her countless life and death experiences and the elixirs she obtained from the outside. Many of the elixirs were taken away by the other disciples. Lu Yi didn't dare to resist before, but it was different now. You still dare to quibble? Even the Radiant Heaven sect elder didn't expect that Lu Yi would dare to resist and suddenly shouted. You're just a piece of trash. Letting you cultivate in the Radiant Heaven sect is already benevolent of us. Of course, we won't give those elixirs to a piece of trash like you. Of course, we'll give them to the other disciples. You brought people to the Radiant Heaven sect and killed an elder, which is a capital offense. Now you're even more stubborn and dare to help this person. Today I'll kill you today. The Radiant Heaven sect elder slammed his palm towards Lu Yi as he spoke. Oh? That's an eye-opener for me. I didn't expect that a sect would steal the elixirs of a disciple. Chu Fengmian was a little surprised when he heard Lu Yi's words. In his past life, when he had become the disciple of the Lord of the Sword Tao, he didn't have a spirit meridian, but his senior brothers and sisters had taken good care of him. They had even helped him search for spirit medicines on many occasions in an attempt to restore his spirit meridian. He didn't expect that the Radiant Heaven sect would steal the elixirs of a disciple. It was an eye-opener for him. Even a small sect would not be able to do such a thing. Humph! Looking at the palm heading towards Lu Yi, Chu Fengmian flicked his sleeve and scattered the spiritual energy around him. Kid, you still have the mood to care about others? It's time for you to taste the power of my Radiant Heaven sect. The Radiant Heaven sect master raged when he saw that Chu Fengmian was distracted. The formation had already begun to condense, and it suddenly pressed down on Chu Fengmian. It seems that the Radiant Heaven sect needs a new group of people. It's a waste of its name to be led by a group of trash like you. The moment Chu Fengmian saw the formation of the Great Array, he knew that the Brilliant Heaven sect must have been one of the few powerful sects in the past. But later on it declined. A great array that had existed for tens of thousands of years still possessed such terrifying power. The power of this great array at its peak was enough to suppress sovereigns. However, with the passage of time, not only had the Radiant Heaven sect declined, but the power of the Grand Array had also decreased to less than 100%. A mere broken formation activated by a bunch of trash wants to suppress me? Chu Fengmian laughed out loud. Break for me. Battle Dragon Claw. The blood essence of the ancient battle dragon began to condense, which suddenly transformed into the claw of the battle dragon. It appeared above Chu Fengmian's head and lashed out at the formation. Boom! Under this claw, the condensed great array was torn apart and began to shatter. All the spirit energy was destroyed by the battle dragon claw, and the elders of the Radiant Heaven sect were sent flying one after another. You people, how dare you attack me? You deserve death, but the Radiant Heaven sect can't do without you. I'll let you work for me as my slaves. Chu Fengmian originally wanted to kill all of these people, but he changed his mind after a moment of thought. Suddenly, he slammed his palm on these elders, and a brand was engraved into their bodies. Even a quasi-emperor wouldn't be able to remove this brand, unless an emperor realm master came to their rescue. Otherwise, they could only be Chu Fengmian's slaves for the rest of their lives. After being branded, the anger on the faces of these elders and the Radiant Heaven sect's sect master instantly disappeared, and they became incomparably respectful. Even if they were furious, they could only be incomparably respectful in front of Chu Fengmian. Otherwise, they would have to endure the pain of heart-burning flames. Lu Yi, these people will be under your control. This is the method to control their brand. After all, the Radiant Heaven sect can't be without people, or else it will become chaotic. Chu Fengmian pointed his finger and sent the method to control the brand into Lu Yi's mind. These life and death steps, old ancestors and heavenly fate sovereigns were meaningless to Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian had no use for them, but if Lu Yi was to take over the Radiant Heaven sect, these people were still needed. Yes, Junior will take good care of the Radiant Heaven sect and work for Senior Chu. Lu Yi said gratefully. From being the weakest disciple of the Radiant Heaven sect with no status, to now even the sect master of the Radiant Heaven sect was under her control. All of this was bestowed by Chu Fengmian. She had already made up her mind to follow Chu Fengmian and work for him no matter what. She had saved Chu Fengmian by chance and changed Lu Yi's fate. Everyone disperse. Chu Fengmian looked at the dazed Radiant Heaven sect disciples below and said calmly. Only then did the Radiant Heaven sect disciples disperse like they were in a dream. All of this made them feel like they were in a dream. For a moment, no one dared to make a sound. Is there a quiet place in the Radiant Heaven sect? I don't want to be disturbed these few days. Chu Fengmian looked at Lu Yi and suddenly asked. The matter of the Radiant Heaven sect had been settled. Now that Chu Fengmian had obtained the dragon snake fruit, the time to refine the dragon snake Saint Pill was ripe. After refining the dragon snake Saint Pill, Chu Fengmian's injuries would recover. Now that he had recovered about 30% of his strength, it was still a little dangerous. However, once he recovered his full strength, as long as he didn't encounter a quasi-emperor, Chu Fengmian could easily deal with them. Chu Fengmian also wanted to refine the sovereign demon god's blood essence as soon as possible. Once he refined the sovereign demon god's blood essence, Chu Fengmian's strength would increase again. At that time, he might even have the ability to fight a quasi-emperor. Chu Fengmian was looking forward to the miraculous effects of the sovereign demon god's blood essence. A secluded place was a must. Senior Chu, you can go to the back mountain. There is a secret chamber of the Radiant Heaven sect there. There are many restrictions there and no one can enter. Lu Yi pondered for a moment and replied, "All right. You will reorganize the Radiant Heaven sect for the next few days. If you encounter any problems, delay them and wait for me to solve them," Chu Fengmian said to Lu Yi. Then, his figure turned into a streak of light and flew towards the back of the mountain. Chapter 1063. It seems like the Brilliant Heaven sect does have some foundation. However, due to some reasons, it declined like the Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace. Chu Fengmian arrived at the back mountain and suddenly discovered that the back mountain of the Brilliant Heaven sect wasn't a mountain peak. Instead, it was like the Sword Monarch Palace, a small world of its own. However, this small world wasn't a spiritual artifact like the Sword Monarch Palace. Instead, it seemed to have been extracted from the void by some experts with supreme divine power. It could be said to be a part of the void. Although the restrictions here were ancient, the power they contained couldn't be underestimated. At the very least, it would be difficult for Chu Fengmian to barge through them. Fortunately, I didn't choose to barge into the back mountain. Otherwise, I would have suffered some hardships, Chu Fengmian thought. Chu Fengmian thought to himself. However, after subduing the Brilliant Heaven sect's sect master and the other elders, their memories had all entered Chu Fengmian's mind. Chu Fengmian knew how to control the restrictions in the back mountain very well. The restrictions didn't obstruct him at all along the way. Soon, Chu Fengmian arrived before an ancient stone chamber. It was said that only the Brilliant Heaven sect's sect masters could enter this stone chamber. Even in the memories of the Brilliant Heaven sect's sect master, Chu Fengmian had never entered this stone chamber. He had only been told how to open this stone chamber. Open! Chu Fengmian suddenly sent out a stream of spiritual energy from his fingertip into the stone chamber's door. The stone chamber's door slowly opened. Where is this? The Brilliant Heaven sect's library? Chu Fengmian pushed open the stone door, revealing many bookshelves. These bookshelves were filled with books. These books weren't made of paper. Instead, they were made of a kind of demonic beast skin. They also contained a faint dragon's might. These books are actually made of dragon skin? Chu Fengmian said in disbelief. There were at least 10,000 books in this secret chamber. Every book was actually made of dragon skin. How many dragons must one have killed to be able to do this? The dragon race was the most respected and powerful demonic beast on any continent. The Divine Dragon Empire, the #1 empire of the ancient monster continent, also revered the dragon race. Not to mention plucking the dragon skin, anyone who dared to make an enemy of the dragon race would be hunted down by the Divine Dragon Empire's people. That's nothing. Back then, the Brilliant Heaven sect fought against the dragon clan of dozens of continents and killed tens of thousands of them. During the peak of the Brilliant Heaven sect, there were hundreds of millions of books in the library. All of them were made of dragon skin. Books made of dragon skin won't rot even after millions or millions of years. The books here aren't even 1/10,000th of them. Xing Xian suddenly woke up. When he heard Chu Fengmian's words, he spoke with disdain. It seems that you still don't understand how powerful the Brilliant Heaven sect was back then. In the past, the Brilliant Heaven sect could occupy a world like the ancient monster continent with a wave of their hand. They had hundreds of Emperor Realm Masters and ruled hundreds of continents. This tiny Radiant Heaven sect is simply an insult to the name of the Radiant Heaven sect. However, looking at these dragon skin books, this Radiant Heaven sect should be related to the former Radiant Heaven sect. Otherwise, they wouldn't have these books, Xing Xian slowly said. Although it's only 1/10,000th of them, the content recorded in these books will be of great use to you. When you have time, you can take them away. Reading them will greatly improve your experience. Hundreds of emperors ruling hundreds of continents. Xing Xian's words stunned Chu Fengmian. Such a force was simply unimaginable. The three great empires of the ancient monster continent were giants in Chu Fengmian's eyes, but in front of the former Brilliant Heaven sect, they were like ants that could be destroyed at will. Is the Brilliant Heaven sect still around? Chu Fengmian suddenly asked. It was reasonable to say that such a powerful sect should have some traces left behind, but Chu Fengmian had never heard of this name in the 9 territories. The Brilliant Heaven sect in the ancient monster continent was already in ruins. It was just a small sect. I don't know. Xing Xian hesitated for a moment before replying. I've been away for too long. It's been tens of thousands of years since I came to the 9 territories. Anything can happen in tens of thousands of years. Perhaps the current Brilliant Heaven sect has declined like it is now. How can such a powerful sect decline? Chu Fengmian couldn't help but ask. The Brilliant Heaven sect was countless times more powerful than Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace and the 6 demon paths. How could such a powerful sect decline? Of course, any sect will eventually decline, just like how powerful martial artists will eventually fall one day. Xing Xian said casually. It was as if he was already used to such things. It's not that there haven't been sects more powerful than the Brilliant Heaven sect, but they have all declined. In this era, their names may not even be left behind. It's not impossible for the Brilliant Heaven sect to decline. When a sect declines, there will always be a new one. When you step into the Emperor realm, you will truly understand how big this world is. After saying this, Xing Xian's figure gradually disappeared. The Emperor realm? In the past, the Emperor realm was simply an unimaginable realm for Chu Fengmian. But from what Xing Xian said, it seemed that only by stepping into the Emperor realm could one directly understand this world. But then again, if Chu Fengmian didn't have the chance to come to the ancient monster continent, he might not even have the chance to come to it. It was said that a master who stepped into the Emperor realm could cross the starry sky and travel to other continents. Let's refine the dragon snake Saint Pill first. Chu Fengmian's mind gradually calmed down. He now felt like he had come from a remote place to a bustling city. Everything was good for him. However, without strength, no matter how much he knew, it would be meaningless. No matter what he did, strength was the most important thing. There was no doubt about it. Chu Fengmian slowly closed the stone door. The barrier of this stone door was so strong that even a quasi-emperor couldn't break in. Refining the dragon snake Saint Pill here was definitely the safest thing to do. In front of Chu Fengmian, countless spirit herbs appeared. They were all obtained by Chu Fengmian from the ancient snake chamber of commerce. 10 types of saint herbs were neatly placed in front of Chu Fengmian. At the front of these 10 spirit herbs, there was a dragon snake fruit. Chu Fengmian had bought the dragon snake fruit from young Master Lei Hong. Chapter 1064. The pure yang heavenly fire began to condense in front of Chu Fengmian, gradually forming a pill furnace. Chu Fengmian merged the 2 divine stones into the furnace. The biggest improvement was not the increase of his cultivation level, but the ability to control the power of the 2 divine stones as he wished. The pure yang heavenly fire was like a part of Chu Fengmian. He could control it at will. The pure yang heavenly fire was the purest flame. It was the best choice to use it to refine elixirs. It was said that some alchemy masters in ancient times would invite some sovereigns to the 9 heavens to obtain the pure yang heavenly fire to refine elixirs. However, it was just a rumor. After all, the pure yang heavenly fire was very troublesome even for sovereigns. Even sovereigns would die if they were careless when rushing to the 9 heavens. Many sovereigns did not dare to take the risk. Refining elixirs using the pure yang heavenly fire gradually became a rumor. Chu Fengmian had always used the dragon flame to refine elixirs. However, this time, Chu Fengmian practiced the ice-fire divine body. It was a good opportunity to try using the pure yang heavenly fire to refine elixirs. With a thought, Chu Fengmian threw the 10 sacred herbs in front of him into the pure yang heavenly fire. Under the roasting of the pure yang heavenly fire, they began to melt and their impurities were extracted. Even the sacred herbs would have impurities. It would take at least a day to remove all the impurities with the dragon flame. However, this time around, Chu Fengmian felt that the impurities of the 10 sacred medicines had been completely removed in less than 10 minutes. Furthermore, the medicinal liquid had a sparkling and translucent color. It was extremely pure. The pure yang heavenly fire is indeed the purest flame in the world. It is impeccable when it comes to removing impurities. Chu Fengmian exclaimed when he saw this. The pure yang heavenly fire was even more amazing than the rumors said. It only took 10 minutes to remove all the impurities, which saved a lot of time. Dragon snake fruit, go! The moment the medicinal liquid began to solidify, Chu Fengmian threw the dragon snake fruit into it. The moment the dragon snake fruit touched the pure yang heavenly flame, it quickly turned into medicinal liquid. However, this medicinal liquid was extremely chaotic because it contained impurities. Under the extraction of the pure yang heavenly flame, the medicinal liquid quickly turned into a crystal clear color. Condense. Chu Fengmian infused a stream of spiritual energy into it, and the 2 medicinal liquids began to fuse together, gradually transforming into the shape of a spiritual pill. A refreshing fragrance was emitted from the elixir. The elixir before his eyes had already reached the level of a heaven elixir. However, it was still far from enough to satisfy Chu Fengmian. Because Chu Fengmian wanted to refine a saint pill. Pill veins appear. With a thought, Chu Fengmian gathered the energy of the pill and inserted it into the pill. Ancient runes could be seen on the surface of the pill. The runes were completely natural, as if they had been born at the same time as the pill. These were the pill veins that represented a saint-grade spiritual pill. The last time Chu Fengmian refined the Jade Du Saint pill, he had condensed 7 pill veins. It was already considered an outstanding saint-grade spiritual pill. However, this dragon snake saint pill was even better. There were a total of 10 saint-grade spiritual herbs and the supreme-grade dragon snake fruit. The dragon snake saint pill refined was clearly visible, with a total of 8 pill veins. An 8 runes saint pill. Seeing this result, Chu Fengmian was not surprised at all. From the beginning, Chu Fengmian had planned to surpass the Jade Du Saint pill. As expected, he had refined an 8 runes saint pill, which was only a step away from the legendary 9 runes saint pill. The supreme grade dragon snake fruit is indeed extraordinary. The dragon snake saint elixir is usually only around 4 or 5 runes, but it can be refined into an 8 runes saint elixir. This medicinal energy is several times stronger than the ordinary dragon snake saint elixir. Chu Fengmian muttered to himself. However, the supreme grade dragon snake fruit alone was not enough to refine the dragon snake saint pill to the level of an 8 runes saint pill. It was all thanks to Chu Fengmian's pure yang heavenly fire that it could reach the level of an 8 runes saint pill. It was the refinement of the pure yang heavenly fire that allowed the dragon snake saint pill to reach the level of an 8 runes saint pill. Immortal Battle Dragon. Chu Fengmian instantly activated all the power of the Battle Dragon skill. The ancient Battle Dragon blood essence in his body was activated to the maximum. The originally invisible injuries appeared all of a sudden. Chu Fengmian's body started to tear. These injuries would only appear when Chu Fengmian used his full strength. The lacerated wounds would constantly bleed. However, Chu Fengmian did not care. At the same time, the dragon snake saint pill was also devoured by Chu Fengmian. The pure medicinal energy quickly spread to every corner of Chu Fengmian's body. Under the medicinal energy of the dragon snake Saint Pill, Chu Fengmian's injuries started to heal. Great, great. I thought that the dragon snake Saint Pill could only heal my injuries. Now, it seems like that's not all. Chu Fengmian could feel that his injuries had already recovered by about 80% within a breath's time. Furthermore, the medicinal energy of the dragon snake Saint Pill had not been completely consumed yet. Chu Fengmian's divine meridians were recovering continuously and soon, they became complete. During the process of recovery, Chu Fengmian felt that his body and divine meridians seemed to have become stronger. Destruction followed by re-establishment. Previously, Chu Fengmian had been forced into a desperate situation during the battle with the heavenly demon supremacy. However, his potential had been completely unleashed. Now that the medicinal energy of the dragon snake Saint Pill had healed Chu Fengmian's injuries, Chu Fengmian felt that he had only recovered about 80% of his strength. He would be even stronger than he had been during the battle with the heavenly demon supremacy. Although a life-and-death battle is dangerous, there are also many benefits. One must experience life-and-death battles in order to become a true powerhouse. Chu Fengmian thought to himself. This could be considered a blessing in disguise. However, Chu Fengmian was not prepared to take such a risk again. In the end, Chu Fengmian had even been forced to use the demon sword, and had almost died. Even Chu Fengmian was not willing to face such a dangerous situation a second time. There is still less than half of the medicinal energy remaining. It seems like the medicinal energy will not dissipate for a while. After a while, Chu Fengmian slowly stood up. He could feel that his injuries had already recovered to the point where they were about 99% healed. Chapter 1065. I thought it would take some time for me to recover from my injuries, but now it seems that I don't have to wait. My body still contains a small part of the dragon snake Saint Pill's medicinal efficacy. I might as well refine the sovereign demon deity's blood essence now to break through. Chu Fengmian pondered. On the phone. His original plan was to recover from his injuries first, then look for an opportunity to slowly refine the sovereign demon deity's blood essence. However, the speed of his recovery was faster than Chu Fengmian had expected. The fact that the dragon snake Saint Pill had been refined into an 8-mark sacred pill was a pleasant surprise. Chu Fengmian's injuries had recovered to 99%, and they no longer had any effect on him. The medicinal efficacy of the dragon snake Saint Pill would gradually dissipate after Chu Fengmian recovered. He might as well take the opportunity to refine the sovereign demon deity's blood essence now. Without hesitation, Chu Fengmian took out the jade bottle containing the sovereign demon deity's blood essence. The sovereign demon deity's blood essence contained extremely pure spiritual power. The moment Chu Fengmian took out the jade bottle, the drop of sovereign demon deity's blood essence jumped, then broke the jade bottle and flew out. The sovereign demon deity's blood essence wanted to escape from Chu Fengmian's hands. It was just a drop of sovereign demon deity's blood essence, but its power was much stronger than that of many sovereigns. If it were some weaker warriors, they might really let the sovereign demon deity's blood essence escape due to a moment of carelessness. You still want to escape? Chu Fengmian snorted coldly. Suddenly, he flicked his sleeve, and a force bombarded the sovereign demon deity's blood essence, scattering it. Devour! Chu Fengmian opened his mouth and swallowed the sovereign demon deity's blood essence, not giving it any chance to escape. At the same time, Chu Fengmian activated the Battle Dragon skill to the limit. 100,000 drops of ancient Battle Dragon blood essence surged in Chu Fengmian's body. The sovereign demon deity's blood essence was devoured by Chu Fengmian and shattered by the power of the Battle Dragon skill. The power of the blood essence was refined by the drops of ancient Battle Dragon blood essence. A huge amount of spiritual energy was constantly being devoured. The power of the sovereign demon god's blood essence was purer than any of the experts Chu Fengmian had ever seen. The primordial war dragon blood essence in his body gradually fused with a drop of demon deity emperor blood essence. At the same time, the primordial war dragon phantom behind Chu Fengmian also began to change. The scales of the primordial battle dragon were revealed. On each of the dragon scales, a series of ancient runes were being formed. This sovereign demon god's blood essence is actually a drop of dragon blood, and this kind of power belongs to at least an invincible fifth-layer Emperor Realm Master. Chu Fengmian was shocked when he sensed the changes in his body. After the battle dragon skill devoured the blood essence of the sovereign demon god, it actually began to cause the ancient battle dragon bloodline to change. It wasn't just an increase in strength. Instead, it was a change in the entire ancient war dragon bloodline. It was a change in the direction of nobility. Ancestor Tianlong, my bloodline has begun to change to Ancestor Tianlong's. Chu Fengmian could feel his bloodline constantly changing, and he couldn't help but sigh in amazement. The ancient runes on each of the dragon scales weren't as simple as they looked. They represented the origin of the dragon clan. It was said that the former ancestor Tianlong had a total of 296 billion dragon scales. Each dragon scale was engraved with such ancient runes, representing the innate power of the dragon clan. Each dragon scale was an array. Countless arrays were added together to make Ancestor Tianlong the most powerful existence in the land of innate divine beasts. The scales on Chu Fengmian's body also began to form arrays. It seemed to be changing in the direction of Ancestor Tianlong. How could Chu Fengmian not be surprised? Could it be that this drop of Ancestor Tianlong's blood essence that I got? Chu Fengmian was shocked. It could be said that to Chu Fengmian, nothing was more beneficial than the essence blood of the primogenitor celestial dragon. Ancestor Tianlong was the ancestor of the dragon clan, an innate divine beast. His blood essence represented the origin of the dragon clan. Even a single drop was enough to make Chu Fengmian reborn. Seeing the changes on Chu Fengmian's body, Chu Fengmian wondered if he'd gotten Ancestor Tianlong's blood essence. But soon, he shook his head. If it was Tianlong's blood essence, it would be far more than that. Although Chu Fengmian's bloodline was evolving, it was extremely slow. The war dragon projection behind him only had 300 dragon scales to form arrays. There was still a long way to go before he could condense all 129,600 dragon scales into a formation. A single drop of Ancestor Tianlong's blood essence should be more than that. This drop of blood essence contains 1% of Ancestor Tianlong's blood essence. It seems that a lucky dragon had once devoured Ancestor Tianlong's blood essence. That's why his blood essence contains Ancestor Tianlong's blood essence. Chu Fengmian muttered to himself after sensing it. It seemed that the owner of this drop of blood essence was lucky enough to have obtained Ancestor Tianlong's blood essence. That was why it contained a portion of Ancestor Tianlong's blood essence. Fortunately, the people of the ancient snake merchant guild didn't seem to have noticed this. They only thought that this drop of blood essence belonged to a sovereign demon god. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been easy for Chu Fengmian to buy it. After all, a drop of the blood essence of an ordinary sovereign demon god was not very attractive to a sovereign demon god. It was even more insignificant to a true sovereign demon god. But if they knew that this drop of sovereign demon god's blood essence contained a portion of Ancestor Tianlong's blood essence, many sovereigns wouldn't be able to resist fighting for it. Even if it was only a portion of Ancestor Tianlong's blood essence, it would be enough to promote a demon beast with the noblest bloodline. After all, innate divine beasts were the ancestors of all demon beasts. They also had the noblest bloodline. If only I could get that drop of Ancestor Tianlong's blood essence from the Tianjian sect. Anger flashed in Chu Fengmian's eyes. One of the rewards of the 9 Regions Genius Tournament was supposed to be Tianlong's blood essence. But he didn't expect that he would take first place, and the Tianjian sect would break their promise. Even though Chu Fengmian made a big scene and killed enlightened Master Jiankei, He couldn't find Ancestor Tianlong's blood essence in his spatial ring. Chu Fengmian had missed an opportunity to improve his strength. Tianjian Sect. Chapter 1066. The ancient battle dragon phantom behind Chu Fengmian had a total of 300 scales, forming a formation. This was already the limit of the demon god's, sovereign demon god's blood essence. The 300 scales were all on the right claw of the battle dragon phantom. Now, it's time to test the power of this formation. I wonder what level my strength has reached. Chu Fengmian muttered to himself. His realm didn't break through as Chu Fengmian had expected. Most of the power of the sovereign demon god's blood essence was used to form the formation of the scales. As a result, Chu Fengmian's realm was still at the 7th step of the life and death steps, the heavenly fate realm. However, this was a good thing for Chu Fengmian. Although Chu Fengmian had lost a chance to make a breakthrough, his bloodline had been upgraded. Whether it was a warrior or a monster, upgrading one's bloodline was much more difficult than upgrading one's realm. Moreover, the 300 formations were constantly operating on the dragon scales, enhancing their power. Battle Dragon Claw. Chu Fengmian's mind suddenly moved, and the Battle Dragon Claw condensed in front of him. At the same time, the power of the 300 formations was pushed to the extreme, enhancing the Battle Dragon Claw. The Battle Dragon Claw that was condensed this time was vastly different from the one that had been condensed before. Ancient and complicated runes were engraved on the Battle Dragon Claw. These ancient and complicated runes did not seem to be abrupt at all. Instead, it made Chu Fengmian feel that this was the true appearance of the Battle Dragon Claw. After all, this was the true appearance of the ancestor of dragons, Tianlong. These 300 formations could only last for a moment before disappearing. However, Chu Fengmian sensed that the power of the Battle Dragon Claw was several times stronger than the power of the Battle Dragon Claw. We're really lucky this time. I'm afraid that the people of the Ancient Snake Merchant Guild will cry when they know that the sovereign demon god's blood essence contains the power of Ancestor Tianlong. Xing Xian suddenly appeared and said, "Since your strength has been restored, you can leave this small place. There are many demon clans with noble bloodlines in the ancient monster continent. They also have ancient inheritances and opportunities. With your current strength, you can choose to fight and see if you can get some opportunities. With my strength, is there anyone who can compete with me?" Chu Fengmian was a little surprised when he heard Xing Xian's words. Others didn't know about Chu Fengmian's strength, but Xing Xian, who had followed Chu Fengmian all the way, was the purest. Chu Fengmian's strength was almost invincible. Xing Xian. Whether or not one could obtain a fortuitous encounter depended on luck. Of course. The ancient monster continent is not like the 9 territories. There are 3 demon emperors on the surface. You should know that not even 1 out of 100 quasi-emperors can step into the emperor realm. Although there are not many quasi-emperors in the ancient monster continent, they are not comparable to the 9 territories. Xing Xian explained after hearing Chu Fengmian's words. The demonic beast race has an extremely long lifespan. For example, in the 3 great empires, there are definitely some hidden quasi-emperors. Even the geniuses they nurture might be quasi-emperors. With your strength, you are still unable to contend against a quasi-emperor. However, it is not impossible for you to contend against one. That is why I said that you have a chance. Quasi-emperor. Hearing Xing Xian's words, Chu Fengmian also understood. With his strength, he was indeed unrivaled under quasi-emperor. However, there were no quasi-emperors in the ancient monster continent. The 3 monster emperors were all true emperor realm masters. Hundreds of quasi-emperors could be found in the ancient monster continent. If Chu Fengmian wanted to compete with those quasi-emperors for opportunities, there was indeed only a chance. No matter how confident Chu Fengmian was, he did not dare to guarantee that he could suppress a quasi-emperor. After all, the heavenly demon supremacy of the 6 Paths Demon Gate was someone who had just stepped into the quasi-emperor realm. Even if the current Chu Fengmian didn't use the vampiric demon sword, he might not necessarily be a match for him. Using the bloodlust demon sword was truly too dangerous. If Chu Fengmian hadn't been so lucky, he would have undoubtedly died this time. Chu Fengmian didn't dare to take such a risk. With my strength, it seems that I'm still a little lacking if I want to move unhindered in the ancient monster continent. However, I'll soon break through and step into the celestial realm. At least, my strength will be able to compete with a quasi-emperor. If I take another step and step into the immortal realm, I'm confident that I can kill a quasi-emperor. At that time, unless the 3 monster emperors personally take action, no one will be able to stop me. Chu Fengmian thought silently. Increasing his strength was still the first step. I wonder where Han Yueli and Luo Shi are now? Chu Fengmian had recovered his strength and was able to leave the desolate domain. Now, he was most concerned about the situation of Han Yueli and Luo Shi. Although the 2 of them were not weak, the ancient monster continent was more dangerous than the 9 domains. Water mirror. Chu Fengmian released a wave of spiritual energy and condensed a water mirror in front of Chu Fengmian. The image of the water mirror was extremely blurry. In a blur, he could only see the figures of Han Yueli and Luo Shi. However, he couldn't even see the 2 of them clearly. What's going on? My strength has recovered. Why can't I even deduce where the 2 of them are? Chu Fengmian was puzzled when he saw this scene. I don't believe that I can't deduce where they are. Sword Tower Divine Light Support. Boom. The power of the Sword Tower Divine Light supported Chu Fengmian's body, causing his cultivation to reach the peak of the immortal realm in an instant. Under this power, the image of the water mirror finally began to appear, but it was only a flash. In the last image, there was only a huge stone dragon statue. It was a huge stone dragon statue that was thousands of miles long. My power seems to have been blocked by a wave of spiritual energy? What's going on? Where is this place? Chu Fengmian's mind was filled with doubts. He could feel that Han Yueli and Luo Shi were not in danger, nor were they captured. However, he couldn't clearly deduce where the 2 of them were. It seemed that the place where Han Yueli and Luo Shi were at was under a very secret restriction. Xingxuan, do you know where in the ancient monster continent there is a 1,000-mile stone dragon? Chu Fengmian suddenly asked. This 1,000-mile stone dragon statue was definitely not an ordinary object. There probably weren't many of them in the ancient monster continent. Chapter 1067. 1,000-mile stone dragon? Are you sure it's the 1,000-mile stone dragon statue? Xing Xian asked in disbelief after hearing Chu Fengmian's words. There's only one place in the ancient monster continent that has a 1,000-mile stone dragon statue. It's the holy land of the ancient monster continent. How did the 2 of them go there? Holy Dragon Secret Realm? Xing Xian, what kind of place is the Holy Dragon Secret Realm? Chu Fengmian couldn't help but ask. From the conversation between young Master Lei and the rest, it seemed that they were also looking forward to the Holy Dragon Secret Realm. It was just that they didn't know what kind of place the Holy Dragon Secret Realm was. The Holy Dragon Secret Realm is located at the center of the ancient monster continent. It's the holy land of the ancient monster continent. It was the symbol of the ancient monster continent hundreds of thousands of years ago. Xing Xian said slowly. If the 2 of them are in the Holy Dragon Secret Realm, you don't have to worry too much. It contains most of the treasures and opportunities of the ancient monster continent. Perhaps it's their opportunity. If you have the chance, you can also go there. Especially the 1,000-mile stone dragon statue. It's actually the statue of Primogenitor Tianlong. You can comprehend Primogenitor Tianlong's supreme martial skill just by looking at it. The 1,000-mile stone dragon statue is actually the statue of Primogenitor Tianlong? Chu Fengmian was a little surprised after hearing Xing Xian's words. He could only see that the 1,000-mile stone dragon statue belonged to the Dragon Clan, but he couldn't see clearly that it was the statue of primogenitor Tianlong. It was no wonder. Primogenitor Tianlong was an innate divine beast and represented the innate origin of the Dragon Clan. Even a statue had unparalleled power. No matter how strong Chu Fengmian was, he couldn't condense a water mirror to look at the statue of primogenitor Tianlong. It seems that I have to find a chance to go to the Holy Dragon's secret realm. Chu Fengmian made up his mind. Whether it was for the statue of primogenitor Tianlong or for Luo Shi and Han Yueli, Chu Fengmian had to go to the Holy Dragon's secret realm. While Chu Fengmian was thinking about his next plan, suddenly, Chu Fengmian felt a jade talisman flew in front of him. This jade talisman came from the Brilliant Heavens sect. It seemed like trouble had come. Let's deal with the Brilliant Heavens sect first before leaving the desolate region and heading to the Holy Dragon's secret dimension. Chu Fengmian's figure moved and left the stone room. However, he also took away all the ancient books along the way. These ancient books of the Brilliant Heavens sect recorded many things about the extraterrestrial starry sky. They were of great help to Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian collected all the draconic books in the stone room and stored them in his empty ring. With a single movement, Chu Fengmian disappeared from the stone room. So many people actually came. At a glance, Chu Fengmian saw several hundred cultivators who had arrived at the Brilliant Sky sect. Even the weakest of these cultivators was an old ancestor who had stepped onto the life and death step. There were even more than 10 sovereigns. The strongest among them was a young man. Chu Fengmian felt that this person had already stepped into the 9th step of the life and death steps, the immortal realm. Furthermore, this person's appearance was extremely similar to young Master Lei Ming, whom Chu Fengmian had killed before. Looks like this is Lei Ming's father, the desolate region's supervisor, Lei Yin. Chu Fengmian glanced at them and sneered. Looks like they're all here. Apart from that, the remaining sovereigns were mostly sect masters of various sections. They seemed to know that Chu Fengmian had killed young Master Lei and had come to help deal with Chu Fengmian. Hundreds of sovereigns had already surrounded the Brilliant Sky sect. The disciples of the Brilliant Sky sect had never seen such a scene before. Many of them were already trembling in fear. Even the eyes of Lu Yi and the others were extremely solemn, as if they were facing a great enemy. Hurry up and hand that brat over. Otherwise, our desolate region alliance will flatten your Brilliant Sky sect today. A young man suddenly walked out and shouted coldly. This young man was the sect master of the Scorching Sun sect. He looked at Lu Yi and said coldly, Lu Yi, I know that this person has an extraordinary relationship with you. Hurry up and hand him over. Otherwise, your Brilliant Sky sect will be annihilated today. Set up the grand formation. Lu Yi ignored the sect master of the Scorching Sun sect. She snorted coldly and ordered the other disciples to set up the grand formation. The formation that Chu Fengmian had torn apart earlier appeared once again and shrouded the Brilliant Sky sect. Many sovereigns were stunned when they saw the formation. They did not expect the Brilliant Sky sect to have such a formation. Although the formation was ancient, the power it contained was not to be underestimated. Even the sovereigns were a little frightened and did not dare to act recklessly. Only the young man, Lei Yin, had a disdainful look in his eyes. Feudal struggle. Although the Brilliant Sky sect was once glorious, that was hundreds of thousands of years ago. This formation has already decayed. If this old man had not stepped into the immortal realm, this formation might be able to withstand a little. But now, this mere formation wants to stop this old man? Lei Yin snorted coldly and suddenly attacked. His body turned into a 1,000-meter-long ancient snake and blasted towards the formation. The power of the formation bombarded Lei Yan's body, but it was unable to shake his body at all. Instead, countless cracks began to appear on the formation under this bombardment. In the next moment, the formation was broken. Hurry up and hand him over. Otherwise, none of you will be able to survive today. This old man wants the Brilliant Sky sect to be completely erased from the ancient monster continent. Lei Yan sneered as he broke the formation. As he sneered, Lei Yan had already accumulated his power and was ready to attack the Brilliant Sky sect. The attack of an immortal realm old ancestor was enough to kill all the disciples of the Brilliant Sky sect. In that case, the Brilliant Sky sect would be completely annihilated. What arrogance! You've just stepped into the immortal realm. Aren't you afraid of biting your tongue? Suddenly, a figure appeared in the sky. Senior Chu. Lu Yi's face finally relaxed when she saw the figure. Chu Fengmian had arrived. There was no problem. Who are you? Lei Yan had never seen Chu Fengmian before. When he saw the sudden appearance of Chu Fengmian, he questioned coldly. Are you the one who killed my son? Although Lei Yan looked calm, there was a deep anger hidden in his tone. He was like a lion that was on the verge of exploding in anger. Lei Yan only had one son, Lei Ming, so he did not dote on him. Lei Ming's death had driven Lei Yan crazy. Chapter 1068. It was as if Chu Fengmian didn't hear Lei Yan's threat at all. Or rather, Chu Fengmian didn't care. Lei Yan's threat was not worth mentioning. Your son? Are you talking about that useless Lei Ming? Chu Fengmian asked calmly. He said it so casually as if it was a matter of course. Even Lei Yan did not expect such an answer from Chu Fengmian. He thought that Chu Fengmian would at least try to quibble, but he did not expect Chu Fengmian to admit it so openly. Judging from his casual tone, he did not take Lei Yan's threat seriously at all. Very well, kid. Since you've admitted it, prepare to die with my Ming. Lei Yan was completely enraged. In his opinion, Chu Fengmian was just a junior. Even if he was arrogant and dared to kill Lei Ming, he could only tremble in fear in front of him. However, Chu Fengmian's calmness had completely infuriated him. The only thing he wanted to do now was to kill Chu Fengmian. Only Chu Fengmian's death could make him feel at ease. Lei Yan's body expanded again in the air and turned into a 1,000-meter-long ancient snake. This was his true form. The Ancient Serpent Clan was the #1 clan in the Ancient Serpent Empire, and Lei Yan was the Ancient Serpent Clan's monster god. After revealing his true form, Lei Yan's strength increased by several times. His huge body charged toward Chu Fengmian in the air. Die, kid! This time, the attack shattered the space and even created countless vortexes that sealed the surrounding space. Lei Yan is angry. This kid is dead meat. Several sovereigns looked at Chu Fengmian as if they were looking at a dead man. Chu Fengmian's words angered Lei Yan and made him use all his strength. Chu Fengmian might have had a chance to live, but this time, it was all gone. The power of a monster god surpassed that of a martial artist. Moreover, they could see that Chu Fengmian had not stepped into the immortal realm. With such a difference in power, there was almost no outcome for this battle. They were all thinking about how to divide the Brilliant Sky sect after Chu Fengmian died. The Brilliant Sky sect also had a lot of wealth. They had followed Lei Yan here for the wealth of the Brilliant Heaven sect. But in the next moment their plans were foiled. Chu Fengmian slowly extended his hand and gently pointed at the 1,000-meter-long ancient snake. The two forces collided. Chu Fengmian's figure was as steady as Mount Tai. There wasn't even the slightest fluctuation. On the other hand, the 1,000-meter-long ancient snake was sent flying by a tremendous force as if it had suffered a heavy blow. The 1,000-meter-long ancient snake continued to writhe. Its scales were cracked, and blood was dripping from them. When everyone saw this scene, their eyes almost popped out. Lei Yan had already stepped into the immortal realm and became a figure without great ancestor. Now that he had revealed his true form and attacked with all his might, it was actually blocked by Chu Fengmian's finger? Just how powerful was this person to be able to do this? This was something that they simply could not understand. Even Lu Yi was stunned when she saw this scene. She was speechless for a moment. She knew that Chu Fengmian was powerful, but she did not expect Great Ancestor without Great Ancestor to be so weak in front of Chu Fengmian. One should know that Great Ancestor without Great Ancestor without Great Ancestor in the ancient Serpent Nation could be conferred with the title of King or Marquis. He was an absolute expert. Brat, who are you? Lei Yan returned to his human form. His face was pale. Obviously, he had suffered a serious injury from that finger attack. This finger attack made him suddenly calm down. This kind of power was not something that an unknown cultivator could possess. You have dragon might in your body. Are you from the dragon race? Why would someone from the divine dragon empire come to the desolate domain? Lei Yan looked coldly at Chu Fengmian and questioned. He could feel a faint dragon might from Chu Fengmian's body. Although this dragon might was well hidden, it could not escape Lei Yan's eyes. As a demonic god, he was extremely sensitive to power. Therefore, in an instant, Lei Yan felt that Chu Fengmian belonged to the dragon race. The divine dragon empire? I'm not. As for me coming to the desolate domain, I just happened to pass by, Chu Fengmian said casually. The divine dragon empire's dragon race had a bloodline. Xiao Chen's bloodline was indeed the war dragon bloodline. However, it had nothing to do with the divine dragon empire. All of Chu Fengmian's strength came from the battle dragon art and not the dragon race. Hence, Chu Fengmian had never considered himself a member of the dragon race. However, Lei Yan felt that Chu Fengmian's words were a feeble quibble. Everyone in the ancient fiend continent knew that all dragon race members belonged to the divine dragon empire. Even cultivators with dragon race bloodlines would be recruited by the divine dragon empire. Chu Fengmian now possessed the dragon race bloodline. However, Lei Yan still claimed that he was not a member of the divine dragon empire. This was simply an insult to Lei Yan's intelligence. You refuse to admit it? To think that someone from the divine dragon empire dares to ignore the rules and appear in the desolate domain. In that case, I'll capture you and bring you back to the imperial capital. Suddenly, Lei Yan attacked again. His true body appeared once more, and his body suddenly changed. Fog spewed out from his shattered scales. Riding on the clouds, there seemed to be an ancient spiritual energy within the clouds. Soaring snake. Chu Fengmian muttered to himself when he saw Lei Yan's change. Lei Yan's appearance was one of the legendary innate holy beasts, the soaring snake. The soaring snake was the ancestor of all snakes, an existence on equal footing with primogenitor Tianlong. However, this Lei Yan's transformation only contained some of the soaring snake's strength. It was a far cry from the true soaring snake. Battle Dragon Claw. Chu Fengmian stood where he was, not moving at all. The power of the ancient battle dragon essence blood gathered above his head and turned into a gigantic battle dragon claw. The power of the 300 formations supported this battle dragon claw. This battle dragon claw had a boundless aura. Just its aura alone was enough to make countless sovereigns flee in a hurry. It was incredibly ancient and majestic. Break for me! Chu Fengmian shouted coldly without any expression on his face. The battle dragon claw smashed down, and the soaring snake's body shattered on the spot. Lei Yan's body went flying as he vomited a mouthful of blood. Come here! Chu Fengmian condensed his spiritual energy and grabbed Lei Yan's body. Lei Yan's body was tightly grasped in his palm. Even though Lei Yan was already in the immortal realm and had become a supreme ancestor, he was still as weak as an ant before Chu Fengmian. Chapter 1069. Seeing Lei Yan caught in Chu Fengmian's hand like a little chick, the monarchs of the Desolate Domain Alliance were all stunned. One should know that Lei Yan was not a weakling. He was in the immortal realm and had the strength of an ancestral ancestor. Any force in the ancient monster continent would want to rope him in. He was definitely a big shot. However, Chu Fengmian defeated him so easily. It even looked like Lei Yan could not fight back at all. Who exactly is this person? A quasi-emperor? How is this possible? The Scorching Sun sect master muttered to himself. He had not recovered from the shock of everything that had happened. Only a quasi-emperor would be able to defeat Ancestor Wu in an instant. However, Chu Fengmian was so young. How could he possess such terrifying strength? Quickly let go of me! Quickly let go of me! My clan is one of the 8 royal clans of the ancient Snake Nation. If you dare to kill me, my clan will not let you off. Lei Yin roared as he landed in Chu Fengmian's hand. Even if you are from the Divine Dragon Empire, you still have to die. Now that the Divine Dragon Empire is sealed, no one can save you. 8 royal clans? What are they? Chu Fengmian laughed disdainfully when he heard Lei Yan's words. You want to threaten me with this? What 8 royal clans? As long as they come to provoke me, I will destroy them all. Kneel down and open your heart. As my slave, working for me is your only hope of survival. Chu Fengmian said coldly as he looked at Lei Yan. If Chu Fengmian wanted to go to other places, he needed a local tyrant. This Lei Yan came from the imperial capital of the ancient Snake Nation. He happened to be useful to Chu Fengmian. Work for you? You dared to imprison me. This is already a capital offense. You still want me to work for you? Quickly let go of me and kneel down to beg for my forgiveness. Then I can let you off. Otherwise, when the experts of my clan make a move, you will definitely die. When Lei Yan heard Chu Fengmian's words, his eyes suddenly flickered as he pondered. Since Chu Fengmian wanted him to submit, it meant that he did not want to kill him. Perhaps they were afraid of his identity. After all, the 8 great sovereign families were the true masters of the ancient Serpent Nation. Even some quasi-emperors would not easily choose to offend the 8 great sovereign families. After all, the ancient Serpent Emperor, the most powerful person on the ancient monster continent, was behind the 8 sovereign families. I can see that although you are powerful, you have yet to step into the Emperor realm and become a quasi-emperor. There are countless quasi-emperors in my family. If you dare to kill me, you will also die. If you let me go now and hand over the Emperor Monster God's blood essence, I can consider letting you go. Seeing that Chu Fengmian didn't reply, Lei Yan thought that Chu Fengmian was really scared and continued to threaten him. The more he heard Lei Yan's threats, the brighter the smile on Chu Fengmian's face. Forget it. Chu Fengmian waited for Lei Yan to finish speaking before he spoke calmly. Initially, he had wanted to subdue Lei Yan. But now, it seemed that there was no need for that. In any case, after killing Lei Yan and taking his memories, Chu Fengmian would still be able to act. He just lacked a local tyrant. If Chu Fengmian wanted to, it wouldn't be hard to find another one. Since you don't want to surrender, you can go to hell. As Chu Fengmian spoke, a stream of spiritual energy slowly condensed in his palm. Suddenly, Lei Yan's body began to swell in Chu Fengmian's palm. His body was on the verge of being crushed by Chu Fengmian. Do you really dare to kill me? The arrogant look on Lei Yan's face completely disappeared and was replaced by a terrified look. He never thought that Chu Fengmian would really kill him without caring about the 8 sovereign families behind him. The 8 sovereign families of the ancient Serpent continent were respected even in the other 2 empires. No one dared to provoke them. Lei Yan thought that Chu Fengmian was just trying to scare and threaten him. He never thought that Chu Fengmian would dare to kill him directly. He couldn't imagine that Chu Fengmian would kill him without any hesitation. This time, Chu Fengmian didn't intend to let him live. He wanted to kill him completely. Don't kill me. Don't kill me. I'm willing to surrender. When Lei Yan felt the threat of death, he didn't care about his dignity and shouted loudly. It was better to live than to die. As long as he didn't die now, he had a way to get rid of Chu Fengmian and deal with him. The 8 sovereign families also had some unique communication technique. As long as he could stall for time and wait for the experts of the 8 sovereign families to arrive, Chu Fengmian would still be dead. You want to surrender now? It's too late. Chu Fengmian said coldly. Die. Boom. Chu Fengmian condensed the power in his palm again. Lei Yan's body was about to be crushed in Chu Fengmian's palm. His blood and qi surged and his face turned red. Little bastard! Lei Yan roared ferociously. He condensed the spiritual energy in his body and made a final struggle. However, as soon as his spiritual energy was condensed, it was crushed by Chu Fengmian, which broke all his hope. Kid, if you dare to kill me, my family won't let you go. They'll kill you to avenge me. You'll be with me soon. Lei Yan roared furiously at the last moment before his body exploded. Chu Fengmian's expression didn't change when he heard this. He just clenched his hand and Lei Yan's body was crushed in his palm. Only a cloud of blood mist was left in the air and was swallowed by Chu Fengmian. He killed without hesitation. Seeing how Chu Fengmian killed Lei Yan so easily, the sovereigns present looked at Chu Fengmian with a different expression. Lei Yan was a member of the 8 sovereign families, but Chu Fengmian killed him without hesitation. This was the behavior of a lunatic. The other sect masters were regretting their actions. Why did they provoke Chu Fengmian? Chu Fengmian didn't even care about Lei Yan, who was from the 8 sovereign families, let alone them. In Chu Fengmian's eyes, these sect masters were no different from ants. But now Chu Fengmian had some use for them. Chu Fengmian's gaze swept across the sect masters. All of them couldn't help but shudder. We didn't mean to offend you. We were threatened by Lei Yan and had no choice but to follow you. Please forgive us. The sect master of the Scorching Sun sect suddenly spoke up and bowed to Chu Fengmian. Since Lei Yan is dead, we'll take our leave first. Chapter 1070. Wait, did I allow you to leave? Chu Fengmian suddenly spoke coldly just as the sect masters were about to leave. Threatened by Lei Yan? These people were just discussing how to divide the brilliant sky sect's wealth, and now they were saying that they were threatened? Even a 3-year-old would not believe such words. Senior, what do you mean? Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, the sect masters stopped in their tracks and looked at Chu Fengmian. Although they all wanted to leave, they couldn't ignore Chu Fengmian at this moment. Chu Fengmian even dared to kill the 8 great sovereign families, let alone them. They could only play dumb and ask Chu Fengmian, Senior, if you have any orders, we will not hesitate to go through fire and water. The Scorching Sun sect master hurriedly said to Chu Fengmian. He could tell that Chu Fengmian was not that gullible, but as the saying goes, one does not slap a smiling face. He was so respectful now because he wanted Chu Fengmian to not be calculative with them. After all, the stronger a martial artist was, the more they cared about their dignity and would not bother to be calculative with the younger generation. Unfortunately, Chu Fengmian was not a fool who only cared about dignity. It was too easy for him to let this matter go with just a few words. A bunch of trash. I have no use for you. However, since you dared to provoke me today, you will naturally have to pay the price. Chu Fengmian spoke calmly as he looked at the sect masters. All of you, kneel down and hand over all of your sect's wealth. From now on, you will be my slaves. Chu Fengmian's words were simple. Nonetheless, to the rulers it was like a bolt from the blue. In particular, many sect masters could not hold it in any longer and were furious to the extreme. They were all sect masters and respected figures in the desolate region. Now, Chu Fengmian wanted them to kneel down and submit to him as his slaves? This was simply something that they could not accept no matter what. Senior's request is too much. The Scorching Sun sect master's face froze. He originally thought that everything would be fine after Chu Fengmian killed Lei Yan, the mastermind. They could also take the opportunity to leave. After all, the Alliance of the Wasteland was behind the inner sect, which was an extremely powerful force. Chu Fengmian had already gained the support of the 8 royal families. If he were to offend the Wasteland Alliance, the gains would not make up for the losses. Therefore, the most he could do was ask them to hand over some compensation and let them leave. However, he had never expected that Chu Fengmian would actually ask them to kneel and submit. This made the Scorching Sun sect master, who had originally wanted to haggle, lose interest. The sect master of the Scorching Sun sect looked at Chu Fengmian coldly and spoke in an unfriendly tone. Although you are powerful, you are still alone. No matter how powerful you are, you will not be able to fight against a colossus. Please act according to your capabilities. The sect master of the Scorching Sun sect mentioned the Wasteland Alliance behind him. Most of the sects in the Wasteland domain belonged to the Wasteland Alliance. Especially these sect masters, each and every one of them was an elder of the Wasteland Alliance. If Chu Fengmian were to start a massacre now, he would completely offend the Wasteland Alliance. Indeed, one person was far from being able to fight against a force. No matter how powerful a martial artist was, he would have to bow his head in front of a force. However, Chu Fengmian was not afraid of the 8 royal families. Naturally, he would not be afraid of a mere Wasteland Alliance. I am not here to haggle with you. Those who kneel and submit now will have a chance to live. Otherwise, you will end up like Lei Yan. Chu Fengmian ignored the threat of the sect master of the Scorching Sun sect and continued to speak coldly. Everyone, please consider carefully. While speaking, Chu Fengmian had already activated his bloodline power. A faint dragon might press down. Many of the sect masters revealed a look of contemplation. Damn it. An outsider dares to act like a tyrant in the Wasteland domain. Everyone, let's attack together. I don't believe that he is a match for us alone. The sect master of the Scorching Sun sect's face suddenly turned ferocious as he roared loudly. I have already informed the Wasteland Alliance. It will not be long before this person dies. Informed? Are you talking about this? Chu Fengmian suddenly spoke. A jade talisman could be clearly seen in his palm. When the sect master of the Scorching Sun sect saw the jade talisman in Chu Fengmian's palm, his face instantly froze. You? How is this possible? The sect master of the Scorching Sun sect had secretly thrown out the jade talisman. When Lei Yan was fighting with Chu Fengmian, the sect master of the Scorching Sun sect had already sensed that the situation was not good. At that time, when Chu Fengmian was fighting with Lei Yan and had no time to be distracted, the sect master of the Wasteland Alliance took out the jade talisman to summon the experts of the Wasteland Alliance. However, the jade talisman had now appeared in Chu Fengmian's palm. Under the sect master's gaze, Chu Fengmian gently crushed the jade talisman in his palm. Do you think that you can hide from me with your tricks? Chu Fengmian looked at the sect master of the Scorching Sun sect and said disdainfully. He was just playing with Lei Yan when he was fighting with him. There was no need for him to fight with his full strength. Of course, Chu Fengmian saw through the sect master of the Scorching Sun sect's little trick. The jade talisman was easily crushed by Chu Fengmian. Now, who are you counting on to save you? Chu Fengmian looked at the sect master of the Scorching Sun sect and sneered. Damn it. Kill. Let's kill our way out. The sect master of the Scorching Sun sect looked at Chu Fengmian and suddenly attacked. A palm of spiritual energy burst out from his palm. This palm of spiritual energy turned into a sea of fire in the air and roared toward Chu Fengmian. This palm was not the power of the Scorching Sun sect's sect master alone. Instead, it was the power of dozens of sovereigns around him. They had been accumulating their power for a long time. At this moment, all of their power erupted, which was comparable to Ancestor Wu's all-out attack. You're overestimating yourself. Chu Fengmian shook his head. With a thought, the battle dragon claw was formed. The sea of fire was torn apart by the battle dragon claw. Go. Retreat. The sect master of the Scorching Sun sect's face changed. He had only seen the battle between Lei Yan and Chu Fengmian, but he did not expect Chu Fengmian to be much stronger than he had imagined. This sudden attack was easily neutralized by Chu Fengmian. However, before he could retreat and turn around, the battle dragon claw had mercilessly fallen on him. Boom! Chapter 1071. Chu Fengmian flicked his sleeve, and the clouds of blood mist fell into his palm. A golden dragon flame ignited in Chu Fengmian's palm, and the blood mist turned into a spirit pellet. Although it was a blood pellet, it didn't have the slightest smell of blood. Instead, it had a refreshing fragrance. The blood essence of a sovereign was originally extremely pure spiritual energy. After being baptized by the dragon flame, the blood pellet no longer had any impurities. Lu Yi, I'll give you this blood pellet. It'll help you refine it, and you can truly control the brilliant heaven sect. Chu Fengmian pointed his finger, and the blood pellet flew toward Lu Yi. It turned into pure spiritual energy and merged with her body. Immediately, Lu Yi's realm began to break through. From the wind-controlling realm to the divine force realm, to the life and death realm, her realm was undergoing earth-shattering changes at a speed visible to the naked eye. He only stopped when he reached the sixth step of the life and death steps, the heart-refining realm. Although her strength was slightly lower than that of the sect masters of other sects, with Lu Yi's talent of having 40 spiritual veins, her strength was not weaker than that of an ordinary ruler. Moreover, the power of the blood pellet hadn't been completely refined. The moment Lu Yi completely refined the power of the blood pellet, she would be able to step into the heavenly fate realm and become a sovereign. Many thanks, young master. Lu Yi looked at Chu Fengmian and said respectfully. Although she could use the restriction to control the experts of the brilliant heaven sect, her strength was still insufficient. This blood pellet was enough to make up for 10 years of bitter cultivation. It was enough for her realm to reach the heavens in a single bound. The other sovereigns looked at Chu Fengmian with even more astonishment. This method of refining blood pellets was simply unheard of. Those dozens of sovereigns were either sect masters or grand elders of some sections. Now they were being refined into blood pellets by Chu Fengmian and devoured. They were now somewhat worried that Chu Fengmian would directly kill them to refine the blood pellet. Is there anyone else who wants to resist? Chu Fengmian looked at the trembling sovereigns and said coldly. The rulers below no longer had the slightest bit of arrogance. They were all huddled up and trembling as they looked at Chu Fengmian. They were afraid that Chu Fengmian would get angry and kill them all. We are willing to submit. When the rulers heard Chu Fengmian's words, they felt as if they had been granted amnesty. They hurriedly knelt on the ground and said respectfully. They had bitterly cultivated to the heavens mandate realm and had almost reached the peak of power. No one wanted to die so easily. Being a slave was much better than dying. In particular, Chu Fengmian's previous means had already scared them out of their wits. They all knew that even if they were to defend against Chu Fengmian now, they would only end up dead. In just a few seconds, all the rulers below knelt on the ground and no longer dared to resist Chu Fengmian. Very good. Chu Fengmian nodded. With a point of his finger, a black spiritual energy flew out. This black spiritual energy turned into restrictions in the air and flew toward each ruler. Although these rulers knew that the restrictions were meant to subdue them, none of them dared to resist. They could only open their hearts and let the restrictions enter their bodies. In this way, as long as these rulers wanted to resist, Chu Fengmian could kill them with a thought. Lu Yi, I'll leave these people to you. With a thought, Chu Fengmian taught Lu Yi the way to control these rulers' restrictions. In any case, to Chu Fengmian, rulers were like ants. They were useless to him. Nevertheless, Chu Fengmian came to the ancient monster continent alone. If he encountered some troublesome matters, it would be better for him to help Lu Yi establish a force. Go and find out about the Holy Dragon's secret realm, especially the way to get there. Chu Fengmian thought for a moment and said. The Holy Dragon's secret realm was extremely mysterious. It was the sacred land of the ancient monster continent, so it was not easy to enter. It would be troublesome for Chu Fengmian to investigate it alone, so it was better to leave it to Lu Yi. With so many powerhouses from so many sects, it would not be difficult to find out. Yes. When Lu Yi heard Chu Fengmian's words, she nodded respectfully and left in a hurry. This was the first time Chu Fengmian had asked her to do something, so she naturally had to do her best. Chu Fengmian left through the air and returned to the secret room at the back of the mountain. That was the safest place. When he arrived at the secret room, Chu Fengmian took out a golden river from his palm. This golden river contained a unique power that was different from any power in the world. It was Lei Yan's time river. All of his memories were recorded in it. When Chu Fengmian crushed Lei Yan to death, he deliberately kept the latter's memories and condensed them into this golden river. This golden river contained all of Lei Yan's memories from when he was young. Even the things that he had forgotten were recorded in it. Chu Fengmian took a few glances and looked at the contents that he was interested in. Chu Fengmian was now in the ancient snake country, which was different from the other countries in the 9 regions. There was not only one royal family but 8 royal families. Because the 8 royal families were the bloodline of the first ancient snake emperor, the 8 royal families ruled the ancient snake country together. The Lei family that Lei Yan belonged to was also one of the royal families in the ancient snake country. However, Lei Yan's bloodline was not pure, so his status in the Lei family was not high. Otherwise, he would not have come to the wasteland to be a supervisor. Originally, when Lei Yan stepped into the immortal realm and became a supreme ancestor, he could return to the imperial capital and rise in status. He did not expect that he would provoke Chu Fengmian and get himself killed. However, now that Chu Fengmian had killed Lei Yan, it was not a big problem. With the Lei family's ability, it would not be difficult for them to find out who killed Lei Yan. Although Chu Fengmian did not care about most of the pursuers, the Lei family was different. There were 3 quasi-emperors in the Lei family. If the 3 quasi-emperors were to pursue Chu Fengmian, it would be a big problem for him. However, quasi-emperors were all old antiques and would not appear on normal days. Although Chu Fengmian had killed Lei Yan, the Lei family might not send their old antiques to deal with Chu Fengmian. However, it was still a hidden danger. If Chu Fengmian went to the imperial capital and encountered the Lei family, he would have to be careful. Chapter 1072. As for breaking through to the next realm from Lei Yan's memories, Chu Fengmian found a trace of memory that was useful for his breakthrough. There was a unique place in the capital of the ancient serpent nation called the Bloody World. It was one of the sacred grounds of the ancient serpent nation. It was famous in the ancient serpent nation. Lei Yan had once entered the bloody secret realm and obtained great benefit. That was how his strength skyrocketed to the immortal realm and became a supreme ancestor. Lei Yan's aptitude wasn't considered high in the Lei family. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been sent to this remote barren region. The turning point of his life began in the Bloody World. The Bloody World was full of opportunities, but in the ancient monster continent, his notoriety far surpassed his treasures. Less than 1 out of 100 warriors who entered the Bloody World could survive, but once they did, they would undergo earth-shattering changes. Therefore, many people with low aptitudes would choose to enter the Bloody World to seek opportunities. For Chu Fengmian, what he cared about the most was the treasures in the Blood World. It was said that there was a unique bloodstone in the Blood World. It was formed from the purest blood qi. It was useless to martial artists, but to demonic beasts, it was enough to rebirth their bloodlines and increase their strength. Although Chu Fengmian was a warrior, his bloodline was more like a demonic beast. This bloodstone might be useful to Chu Fengmian. Even if it couldn't improve his bloodline, it would be enough for Chu Fengmian to accumulate strength and break through. The spiritual power contained in the bloodstone was purer than all the other treasures. It was the best way to break through. Although Chu Fengmian was only 1 step away from the immortal realm, he still needed an opportunity. The Bloody World was the best opportunity. The best thing was that it didn't take much trouble to enter the Bloody World. As long as one paid enough wealth, one could enter, regardless of their status. This was the most beneficial for Chu Fengmian. Some of the famous sacred grounds in the ancient monster continent, such as the Sacred Dragon's Secret Realm, were known to everyone, but only 1 in a billion could enter. It was even more difficult for someone like Chu Fengmian to enter. Therefore, he chose to let Lu Yi investigate the Sacred Dragon's Secret Realm. The entrance to the bloody world is in the imperial capital. It seems that the next step is to go there. Chu Feng planned his next move in his heart, which was to head to the imperial capital. The imperial capital was the capital of the ancient Snake Nation. As one of the 8 royal families, the Lei family was naturally in the imperial capital as well. However, although the Lei clan wasn't strong enough to stop Chu Fengmian, the imperial capital was so big that it wouldn't be easy for the Lei clan to find Chu Fengmian. For the sake of a breakthrough, Chu Fengmian wasn't afraid of such a small risk. Oh yeah, Lei Yan's empty ring seems to have some bloodstones. Chu Fengmian suddenly recalled that when he was flipping through Lei Yan's memories, he seemed to have mentioned that Lei Yan had brought out a batch of bloodstones from the world of blood. Thinking of this, Chu Fengmian took out Lei Yan's empty ring and opened it. In the innermost part of the empty ring, there were a few fist-sized glowing red rock. This red rock looked extremely turbid, and one could smell the scent of blood from it. However, the smell of blood was different from any blood Chu Fengmian had ever smelled. It seemed to be formed by the fusion of tens of thousands of different kinds of blood. Let's devour one first and see how it works. Chu Fengmian's mind moved, and one of the bloodstones was pinched in his palm. Without needing any spiritual energy from Chu Fengmian, this bloodstone turned into pure spiritual energy in Chu Fengmian's hand and began to merge with Chu Fengmian's body. When this bloodstone entered his body, Chu Fengmian felt that his bloodline seemed to be changing. So many kinds of energy. This bloodstone contains the blood of countless experts. Dragon clan, demon god, exotic beast, and humans. How many kinds of bloodline power has merged with this bloodstone? When the bloodstone entered his body, Chu Fengmian felt the uniqueness of this bloodstone. Originally, Chu Fengmian guessed that this bloodstone should be condensed from the blood of some experts, just like the dragon blood crystal. But now, it seemed that it was more amazing than Chu Fengmian had imagined. The power contained in this bloodstone was the fusion of countless fresh blood. These fresh blood were fused with a unique power and merged with Chu Fengmian's body. My bloodline has actually improved by this much? The power of this bloodstone was quickly integrated into Chu Fengmian's body. Chu Fengmian felt that his bloodline seemed to have improved because of this bloodstone. It was very similar to the feeling when he swallowed the blood essence of the sovereign demon god, but the improvement was very small, not even 1/10,000th of the improvement. But even if it was only 1/10,000th of the improvement, Chu Fengmian could clearly feel it. This bloodstone contains an extremely high-grade dragon bloodline. That's why it's able to upgrade my bloodline. Chu Fengmian quickly reacted and checked the power of this bloodstone. He vaguely felt that part of the power of this bloodstone originated from an extremely high-grade dragon clan bloodline. It was this dragon clan bloodline that could improve Chu Fengmian's bloodline. Of course, the power contained in this bloodstone was not as simple as the dragon clan bloodline. Chu Fengmian could almost find the power of any bloodline in the world. Although I don't know the origin of this bloodstone, it has indeed improved my bloodline. Chu Fengmian thought to himself. The improvement of bloodline was more important for Chu Fengmian to make a breakthrough. This was especially true for the bloodstone, which contained extremely pure spiritual energy. Not only could it improve Chu Fengmian's bloodline, but it was also enough for Chu Fengmian to accumulate spiritual energy and make a breakthrough. However, the effect of one bloodstone was too small for Chu Fengmian. For Chu Fengmian, he needed tens of thousands or even millions of bloodstones to make a breakthrough. The bloodstones left by Lei Yan were just a drop in the bucket for Chu Fengmian. But now, Chu Fengmian also knew where the bloodstones came from. It would not be difficult for him to obtain a large amount of them. It seems that I must go to the imperial capital. Chapter 1073. After Chu Fengmian felt the effect of the bloodstone on him, he decided on a plan. If he had a large number of bloodstones, it would not be difficult for him to ascend to the heavenly realm. What made Chu Fengmian the happiest was that the power of the bloodstone was enough to enhance the power of his bloodline. To Chu Fengmian, this was much more useful than simply increasing his cultivation base. Increasing his cultivation base would only increase his power. This increase in bloodline would increase Chu Fengmian's potential. It was enough to allow Chu Fengmian's body to erupt with even greater power. With his current strength, he was invincible in the same realm because of Chu Fengmian's holy pulse, ice and fire divine body, and battle dragon bloodline. Chu Fengmian especially valued the enhancement of his bloodline. The battle dragon bloodline was considered an extremely noble bloodline. However, as Chu Fengmian's strength grew, he knew that there were many bloodlines stronger than the battle dragon bloodline in the world. Not to mention innate divine beasts, even 1% of the power of innate divine beasts would surpass Chu Fengmian's battle dragon bloodline. If Chu Fengmian wanted to reach the pinnacle, he had to improve his bloodline and improve his battle dragon bloodline. The bloodstone was the best way for Chu Fengmian to improve his bloodline. However, if one wanted to improve their bloodline, a few bloodstones were nothing. At the very least, one would need a large amount of bloodstones. Tens of thousands of bloodstones were needed. The bloodstones before him were better than nothing. Since he had nothing to do, Chu Fengmian began to devour the other bloodstones. A day later, Chu Fengmian sat in the secret chamber. He had a rough idea of the power of the bloodstones. The power of the bloodstones was purer than Chu Fengmian had imagined. There were almost no impurities. Chu Fengmian was originally worried that the power of the bloodstones would be too chaotic. He had some impression of Chu Fengmian's body. However, after a deeper understanding, Chu Fengmian discovered that although the power of the bloodstones was abundant, it was not pure. The power of other bloodlines would not be integrated into Chu Fengmian's bloodline. It would only be transformed into pure spiritual energy and devoured by Chu Fengmian. The purity of the spiritual energy was even purer than that of a royal-grade spirit stone. I wonder what kind of person was able to create such a bloodstone. Chu Fengmian was amazed. It seemed like this world was far more complicated than Chu Fengmian had imagined. Even Chu Fengmian couldn't fully comprehend the mysteries of the bloodstones. However, he was certain that devouring a large amount of bloodstones would be extremely beneficial to him. The only thing Chu Fengmian needed to do now was to head to the imperial capital and obtain a large number of bloodstones. Young master. When he woke up, the stone door was pushed open and Lu Yi slowly walked out. She even had some empty rings on her hand. The sacred herbs and treasures of the various sects are all here. Please inspect them, young master. Lu Yi respectfully handed over the empty ring. Well done. Chu Fengmian took the empty rings and opened them. Almost every empty ring was filled to the brim with countless natural treasures and all kinds of heavenly items. This was the accumulation of the various large sects and clans. There were a total of 5 empty rings. It seemed that Lu Yi had indeed dug out all of their treasures. Although these sects weren't big, they were all sects that had existed for thousands of years. The ancient monster continent was even more peaceful than the 9 domains. There were many thousand-year-old sections. There were even sects that had existed for tens of thousands of years. Even the 3 great empires were huge forces that had existed for more than 100,000 years. The foundations of these forces were terrifying to an unimaginable extent. Therefore, Chu Fengmian didn't want to fall out with the 3 great empires unless he had no other choice. As for the sacred dragon's secret realm, there are very few records of it in the desolate region. I can't collect much in a short time. Please forgive me, young master. Lu Yi was silent for a moment before she spoke. After all, the desolate region was remote and the sacred dragon's secret realm was the noblest sacred ground in the ancient monster continent. Ordinary cultivators wouldn't even know what the sacred dragon's secret realm was. Although she had spent a day, she didn't find out much about the sacred dragon's secret realm. Chu Fengmian was also aware of this, so he wasn't in a hurry. At the very least, Chu Fengmian felt that the sacred dragon's secret realm was extremely dangerous. Chu Fengmian couldn't even spy on it. Going there rashly was also not dangerous. Therefore, Chu Fengmian had to at least reach the Empyrean realm. Chu Fengmian would only choose to go to the sacred dragon's secret realm when his strength was enough to contend against a quasi-emperor. It's fine. Chu Fengmian looked at Lu Yi and said casually. Continue to collect information about the sacred dragon's secret realm. Inform me immediately if you find out anything. Also, if you encounter any difficulties, you can use the Jade Talisman to contact me. Chu Fengmian needed information about the sacred dragon's secret realm, so he didn't lack time. He just needed Lu Yi to slowly collect information. There wasn't much information about the sacred dragon's secret realm in the desolate region because the sacred dragon's secret realm didn't have much to do with the desolate region. Now that Lu Yi controlled dozens of sects in the desolate region, it wasn't difficult for her to collect some information. I'm going to leave the desolate region. I'll leave all matters in the desolate region to you. Take these spirit stones and use them to develop your sections. Consider it compensation to the other sections. Chu Fengmian suddenly thought of Lu Yi and tossed her a spatial ring. This spatial ring was filled with royal-grade spirit stones. Now that Chu Fengmian's divine veins had recovered, spirit stones were at his fingertip. Since he took things from the other sects, Chu Fengmian would definitely compensate them. Lu Yi, expand your forces in the desolate region and collect information about the sacred dragon's secret realm. Also, use the spatial ring to collect as many bloodstones as you can. I have a use for them. Halfway through, Chu Fengmian suddenly added another sentence. The bloodstones were actually not useful for Chu Fengmian's breakthrough to the Empyrean realm. What Chu Fengmian cared more about was the bloodstone's ability to improve his bloodline. Even if Chu Fengmian broke through to the Empyrean realm, the bloodstones would still be of great use to him. Because of this, Chu Fengmian still needed to collect as many bloodstones as he could. Although bloodstones were expensive, Chu Fengmian had found several bloodstones in the spatial rings of the other sections. Therefore, there should be some scattered bloodstones outside. Lu Yi was responsible for collecting them. After all, the wealth Chu Fengmian had left behind was enough for him to do all this. Chapter 1074. Chu Fengmian had already taken care of the matters of the Brilliant Heaven sect. There was no point for him to continue staying in the desolate region. The wealth that Chu Fengmian left for Lu Yi was enough for her to develop. As for the other matters, they were no longer under Chu Fengmian's control. Chu Fengmian helped the Brilliant Heaven sect integrate the other sects because he suddenly thought of asking them to help him investigate the sacred dragon's secret realm. However, Chu Fengmian never placed his hopes on others. While Lu Yi was investigating, Chu Fengmian would not stay idle. The best place to investigate the sacred dragon's secret realm was the imperial capital, the capital of the ancient serpent country. There were many powerhouses there, and it was the best place to gather information. The bloody world was also in the imperial capital. Chu Fengmian needed to collect bloodstones and head to the imperial capital. At the same time, he could gather information about the sacred dragon's secret realm. It was killing two birds with one stone. Someone is spying on me? The moment Chu Fengmian left the Brilliant Heaven sect, he suddenly felt that there seemed to be a few spiritual consciousnesses spying on him. They didn't enter the Radiant Heaven sect. Instead, they lingered outside the Radiant Heaven sect until Chu Fengmian left before suddenly appearing. Who are they? Are they from the Lei clan? No, even if they're from the Lei clan, they wouldn't have come so quickly. It's impossible for them to be from the Desolate Region Alliance. Who are they? Chu Fengmian sensed that there were at least two Immortal Realm great ancestors among these spiritual consciousnesses. Chu Fengmian was secretly surprised. There were only a few Immortal Realm great ancestors in the Desolate Region, but there were two of them. However, there was no need for Chu Fengmian to continue guessing. A few figures had already approached Chu Fengmian. A total of 9 figures approached. These 9 figures were led by a young man. He was wearing a luxurious robe and looked extremely noble. Among the remaining 8 figures, 2 of them were the 2 immortal realm great ancestors that Chu Fengmian sensed. The remaining 6 were sovereigns of the heavenly mandate realm. 2 immortal realm great ancestors and 6 sovereigns. Even in the ancient monster continent, such a force was enough to easily destroy countless sections. Now, it seemed that these people were only the young man's guards. This aura. Is he from the ancient snake clan? Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered as he carefully observed the aura of the young man. The aura of the young man was from the ancient serpent clan. In other words, he was at least the same as Lei Yan. This young man was also a member of the 8 great imperial families. Moreover, in terms of Lei Yan's bloodline, this young man was undoubtedly purer. It's actually him. Chu Fengmian exclaimed in surprise when he saw the young man's face clearly as the figures drew closer to him. Chu Fengmian had seen this young man before. He was the mysterious young man in the sky room, one of the ancient snake auction. As such, Chu Fengmian was able to somewhat guess why this young man had come. When Chu Fengmian saw these figures approaching, he slowly stopped. The 8 warriors approached Chu Fengmian and surrounded him. This made Chu Fengmian's eyes turn cold. Everyone, stop this, Chu? What is the matter? Chu Fengmian glanced at these people and spoke calmly. Hand over the sovereign demon god's blood essence, and we'll let you go. The young man glanced at Chu Fengmian and said coldly, I know that the sovereign demon god's blood essence is in your possession. You don't have to feign ignorance. The people of the ancient Snake Chamber of Commerce have already told me everything. Now, hand over the sovereign demon god's blood essence, and you can still escape unscathed. The young man spoke without any regard for Chu Fengmian. His words were an order. The meaning of his words was that if Chu Fengmian did not hand over the sovereign demon god's blood essence, he could forget about leaving alive. His arrogance was even greater than Lei Yan's and Lei Ming's. Chu Fengmian's eyes turned cold when he heard the young man's words. These people were truly overbearing. They wanted Chu Fengmian to hand over the sovereign demon god's blood essence. Not to mention that the blood essence of the sovereign demon deity was priceless and had already been refined by Chu Fengmian. Even if the blood essence of the sovereign demon deity was still in Chu Fengmian's hands, Chu Fengmian wouldn't hand it over for free. Why should I? Chu Fengmian showed a cold smile as he looked at the young man. If you don't hand over the sovereign demon god's blood essence, you will die. No one in this ancient snake nation can save you. The young man smiled coldly. His tone was extremely confident. Stop struggling. I know that you killed Lei Yan. However, Lei Yan is just trash who just advanced to the immortal realm. He is not worth mentioning compared to us. You'd best stop struggling so recklessly, lest you lose your life. Your Highness, there is no need to waste your breath on this person. This person's bloodline is extremely pure dragon race bloodline. Now that the Divine Dragon Empire is sealed, this person is most likely a fugitive from the Divine Dragon Empire. Just kill him and devour his blood essence. Your Highness, devour his blood essence. A supreme old ancestor standing beside the young man suddenly spoke. That supreme old ancestor said coldly as he looked at Chu Fengmian. Brat, kneel and offer up the sovereign demon god's blood essence. Then, cripple your cultivation and let His Highness devour your blood essence. It is your honor that your blood essence can become His Highness's strength. Old fellows, do you really think that you can contend with me with your strength? Originally, I wanted to let you off. Now, it looks like you'd better die. Chu Fengmian felt somewhat frustrated. Originally, Chu Fengmian could tell that this young man's identity was extremely noble in the ancient Snake Nation. Clashing with him would be an extremely troublesome matter. However, it now looked like the principle of being bullied for being kind was everywhere. Although Chu Fengmian did not want to provoke trouble, he would not allow others to ride on him. No matter who they were, as long as they dared to provoke Chu Fengmian, they would die. No one was an exception. You still want to resist? What an ignorant brat. Senior Qing, Senior Qi, the two of you make a move and capture this person. The young man did not get angry when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. He only ordered the two supreme old ancestors beside him coldly. Yes, Your Highness. The two supreme old ancestors stepped forward and looked at Chu Fengmian with disdain in their eyes. Chapter 1075. In their eyes, Chu Fengmian was just a little guy, an unknown figure who was not worthy of them making a move. Forget it, there's no need to talk nonsense with this person. Let's capture him and present him to His Highness. Elder Qi looked at Chu Fengmian and said calmly. As he spoke, Elder Qing, Elder Qi, and the two supreme ancestors suddenly attacked together. The two of them jumped up and waved their hands in the air. A gust of wind burst out from Elder Qing's palm and bombarded Chu Fengmian. At the same time, Elder Qi also attacked at the same time. There was a scarlet flame in his palm. These two forces, one wind and one fire, bombarded Chu Fengmian at the same time. This flame, with the support of the wind, instantly turned into a sea of fire that filled the sky, mercilessly devouring Chu Fengmian. The strength of Elder Qi and Elder Qing could be said to complement each other. When the two of them attacked together, almost no supreme ancestor could resist them. At the moment when the sea of fire was about to devour Chu Fengmian's figure suddenly moved, and from the corner of his mouth, there was a hint of disdain. He waved his hand in the air, and suddenly, the war dragon claw condensed and fell, bombarding the sea of fire. You're courting death. Elder Qi saw Chu Fengmian's action and snorted coldly. Even if a supreme ancestor touched this flame, he would die without a doubt. It would be too late to avoid it. Chu Fengmian was simply courting death by taking the initiative to touch it. He had already imagined the scene of Chu Fengmian being devoured by the flames in the next moment. The war dragon claw blasted out and directly hit the sea of fire. Countless flames burned toward the war dragon claw. However, under the burning of the flames, the war dragon claw did not even have the slightest bit of damage. Under the burning of the flames, it was unscathed. Chu Fengmian had the ice and fire divine physique. To Chu Fengmian, even the pure yang heavenly fire could not hurt his body. Not to mention this small natal flame. What's going on? Lord Qi's flame? It doesn't affect this person at all? What the hell is that? A dragon claw? What a mysterious power! The other rulers were watching from the side. When they saw this scene, they exclaimed in surprise. Even the young man was taken aback. He was well aware of Qing Lao's and Qi Lao's strength, especially this flame, which was the ancient snake clan's natal flame. Even a quasi-emperor would have to avoid it. But now, it had no effect on Chu Fengmian at all. You two old fellows, do you really think you're my match? I wanted to let you go this time, but since you're courting death, I'll fulfill your wish. Chu Fengmian's ice-cold voice rang out. With a thought, the battle dragon claw violently swept across the sea of flames. Under the sweep of the battle dragon claw, the sea of fire was completely shattered and scattered on the spot. In fact, after the battle dragon claw swept through the sea of flames, it changed its target and directly shot towards Old Qing and Old Qi Bang. The attack of the battle dragon claw sent Elder Qing and Elder Qi flying. To the others, it was an unbelievable scene. One move was enough to send two old ancestors flying. Could it be that Chu Fengmian was a quasi-emperor? Damn it, this kid's strength is really strange. Where did he get such powerful strength? There shouldn't be such a person in the divine dragon country. Flames are useless against him. Looks like we can only use strength to subdue him. But it's a secret that we came to the desolate domain. If we use our full strength, we'll make a big deal out of it. After the two old ancestors were sent flying, they instantly began to talk with each other with their spiritual consciousness. The two of them were not humans, but demon immortals. Their bodies were countless times tougher than human martial artists. If an ordinary human was sent flying by the battle dragon claw, they would be severely injured even if they didn't die. But for the two of them, it was only a minor injury. Elder Qing, Elder Qi, use your full strength. Since he still wants to resist, kill him directly. The young man looked at Chu Fengmian with a hint of fear and killing intent in his eyes. Suddenly, he opened his mouth and spoke. It was much easier to kill someone and capture someone alive. Yes. After hearing the young man's order, Elder Qing and Elder Qi's face became ferocious. Kid, looks like you've really angered His Highness. Very well. Today we'll let you see what true strength is. Ancient snake appear. Old Qing and Old Qi roared at the same time. Their bodies suddenly underwent a transformation. They continued to swell and turned into two 10,000 feet large ancient snakes. These two ancient snakes, one green and one red, were the true forms of Elder Qing and Elder Qi. After transforming into their true forms, Elder Qing and Elder Qi's strength was more than 10 times stronger than before. Kid, I advise you to use your true forms. Otherwise, don't regret it when you die. Elder Qing looked at Chu Fengmian and said ferociously, Use my true forms? You're not worthy. I was wondering what it was. Turns out it's just two little snakes. You want to kill me? Chu Fengmian looked at the changes of Elder Qing and Elder Qi. His face was calm and his eyes were still filled with disdain. It was as if the two of them used their true form's strength. In Chu Fengmian's eyes, it was as if he didn't care at all. How could the two of them tolerate this? Junior, how arrogant! Do you really think you're a sovereign? Elder Qing and Elder Qi roared at the same time. The 2,000 zhang long ancient snakes bombarded Chu Fengmian at the same time. This time, the two of them used pure strength. They could see that Chu Fengmian had some means to deal with the flames. This time around, he was using pure power to bombard Chu Fengmian. This strength alone was enough to break the space and shake the heavens and the earth. The area where the strength passed was shattered and turned into the void. Even if I'm not a sovereign, it's still easy for me to kill these two old men. How dare you be so presumptuous in front of me with such strength? Break! Chu Fengmian looked at the joint strength of the two old men bombarding him. He didn't dodge, but secretly communicated with the divine tree. He pushed the power of the divine tree to the extreme and blasted a punch. Boom! Chu Fengmian's fists were extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, tens of millions of fist wind blasted out and bombarded Elder Qing and Elder Qi. Bang! 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 Many of Elder Qing and Elder Qi's scales were shattered by Chu Fengmian's fist winds. At a glance, the two old men's true forms were dripping with blood. Chapter 1076. How is this possible? What kind of power is this? Even though it's 1 versus 2, it actually managed to send Elder Qing and Elder Qi flying? The other rulers were dumbfounded as they watched everything. Although Elder Qing and Elder Qi were not the strongest martial artists, they were still demon immortals who had stepped into the immortal realm. Their combined strength was simply disdainful. Even some demon immortals with strong physical bodies were no match for them. However, Chu Fengmian was able to effortlessly sweep through everything before him. He had directly shattered their joint attacks. What kind of power is this? What a strong physical body. Could this person be from the Golden Dragon clan? But he hasn't revealed his true form yet. Even if he is from the Golden Dragon clan, he shouldn't be a match for us. This was the first time Elder Qing and Elder Qi had encountered such a person. Their strength was ruthlessly crushed. Given their strength, unless they encountered a quasi-emperor, no supreme old ancestor would be able to crush them. However, Chu Fengmian was obviously not a quasi-emperor. This was something that they could not understand even if they racked their brains. Chu Fengmian's physical body had gone through countless fortuitous encounters to attain his current strength. Especially the divine tree, which could not be found outside of the 9 domains. Even if they had heard of the divine tree, they could not believe that the power of the divine tree could be controlled by a single person. All of this seemed unbelievable to the young man. Even his face became incomparably gloomy. Damn it, everyone attack and kill this brat. How dare he hurt my people? I will kill him. The young man roared furiously. The sovereigns around him attacked one after another. The 6 sovereigns attacked at the same time, attacking Chu Fengmian together. How dare you roar? Do you think I will let you go? Today, none of you will leave. Chu Fengmian glanced at the young man. His killing intent surged. All of this was because of this young man. The other sovereigns and the 2 supreme old ancestors were only his subordinate. Chu Fengmian would not forget this person. Come here. Chu Fengmian grabbed at the young man. A surge of spiritual energy condensed in Chu Fengmian's hand, turning into a transparent dragon claw that grabbed at the young man. Impudent! Stop! Don't even think about hurting His Highness. When the 6 rulers saw Chu Fengmian's action, they hurriedly blocked the transparent dragon claw. Streams of spiritual force and countless martial skills were fired toward the transparent dragon claw. You want to stop me with just the likes of you? All of you die. Chu Fengmian scoffed coldly. With a flick of his sleeve, the battle dragon claw was condensed again, and it blasted toward the 6 rulers in the air. The bodies of the 6 sovereigns were swept by the war dragon's claw. They had not even stepped into the immortal realm, so they were all shattered by the war dragon's claw. The bodies of the 6 sovereigns were completely destroyed by the battle dragon's claw. Not a single one of them survived. Only a mist of blood was left in the air, along with the screams of the 6 sovereigns. You actually dared to kill my men. The young man looked at Chu Fengmian as if he had seen something unbelievable. With his status in the ancient serpent country, even a quasi-emperor would not dare to kill his men. However, Chu Fengmian did not seem to care at all. He had effortlessly killed the 6 sovereigns. Even Chu Fengmian's expression did not change at all. It was as if he had done something extremely easy. So what? Do you think I dare to kill you? Chu Fengmian looked at the young man. He could tell that this person should be of an extremely noble background. He had always been arrogant and had never suffered a loss before. That was why he dared to threaten Chu Fengmian. Unfortunately, he had offended the wrong person today. Even if this young man was the ancient serpent emperor's son, Chu Fengmian would still kill him. In this world, there was no one that Chu Fengmian did not dare to kill. Boom! The transparent dragon claw seemed to want to prove Chu Fengmian's words. Its speed increased, and it directly clawed at the young man. When the young man saw the transparent dragon claw approaching, his face was filled with fear. He gathered his chi, wanting to block it. However, this young man's realm was only at the peak of the divine power realm. He had not even stepped into the life and death realm. In front of Chu Fengmian, this kind of strength was not even comparable to an ant. His power bombarded the transparent dragon claw, but it could not shake it in the slightest. Come here. Instead, Chu Fengmian ordered, and the young man's body was directly caught in the palm of Chu Fengmian's hand. Now, as long as Chu Fengmian was willing, he could directly crush this young man with a thought. Stop it! Brat, let go of His Highness. If you dare to harm even a hair on His Highness, no one will be able to save you. Brat, His Highness is the young master of the Hua clan. If you dare to kill His Highness, you will be a wanted criminal in the ancient serpent nation. Quickly let go of His Highness. Seeing Chu Fengmian holding the young man in his hand, Elder Qing and Elder Qi no longer cared about the injuries on their bodies and roared loudly. They even directly called out the young man's identity. Hua clan? Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered when he heard these words. Of course, he knew what the Hua clan was. Chu Fengmian was no longer as unfamiliar with the ancient monster continent as before. At the very least, Chu Fengmian knew about the Hua clan. The ancient serpent nation was one of the 8 great imperial families. It was even more powerful than the Lei clan, which Lei Ming and Lei Yan belonged to. This was because the previous ancient serpent emperor was from the Hua clan. In the ancient serpent nation, the Hua clan was the strongest clan besides the current number 1 imperial family, the Yi clan. Chu Fengmian had roughly guessed that this young man should be from one of the 8 great imperial families. He had not expected him to be from the Hua clan. Brat, do you know who I am? Quickly let go of me. Now, kneel down and beg for my forgiveness. As my slave, I can consider letting you live. The young master of the Hua clan, who was being held in the palm of Chu Fengmian's hand, roared loudly at Chu Fengmian. In his opinion, Chu Fengmian's silence meant that he knew how powerful the Hua clan was. Even the powerhouses of the other two great nations were unwilling to deal with the Hua clan. After all, to a certain extent, the Hua clan represented the ancient serpent nation. Making an enemy of the Hua clan was making an enemy of the ancient serpent nation. Even a quasi-emperor would not be willing to make an enemy of the Hua clan. So what if you are the young master of the Hua clan? It doesn't matter who you are if I want to kill you. It doesn't matter who you are. Chu Fengmian looked at the young master of the Hua clan and spoke casually. Chapter 1077. Originally, Chu Fengmian was still considering whether to let the young master of the Hua family go. After all, the Hua family was much more powerful than the Lei family in the ancient serpent country. Moreover, the young man in front of him was the young master of the Hua family. If he killed him, the Hua family would definitely not rest until Chu Fengmian was dead. However, judging from the words of the young master of the Hua family, it was obvious that he would not rest until Chu Fengmian was dead even if he let him go today. Since that was the case, Chu Fengmian might as well kill him directly. Since he had already provoked the Lei family, Chu Fengmian did not mind adding the Hua family to the mix. You want to kill me? Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, the young master of the Hua family was stunned for a moment. In his opinion, Chu Fengmian should have let him go by now and knelt on the ground, begging for his forgiveness. No matter how strong Chu Fengmian was, he was just an ant in front of the Hua family. How could he fight against the entire Hua family? Even a quasi-emperor could not do it, unless he was a true emperor. The complacent look on his face froze at this moment. I don't care about the identity of the person I want to kill. It's the same for the people of the Hua family. Chu Fengmian spoke again. The moment he spoke, his mind moved at the same time. The transparent dragon claw increased its strength, wanting to crush the young master of the Hua family to death. However, the moment the transparent dragon claw pinched the young master of the Hua family's body, a jade talisman suddenly flew out from the young master of the Hua family's body. The jade talisman flew out and arrived in front of the young master of the Hua family. Suddenly, a large amount of spiritual energy gushed out from the jade talisman and turned into a barrier in front of the young master of the Hua family. This transparent barrier looked very thin, but it was enough to block the transparent dragon claw. One should know that even a casual strike from Chu Fengmian was enough to crush an immortal realm old ancestor to death. The power of this jade talisman was actually enough to block it? A protective jade talisman, refined by a quasi-emperor? Chu Fengmian was a little surprised when he saw the jade talisman that appeared around the young master of the Hua family. From the jade talisman, Chu Fengmian could faintly feel the pressure of an emperor realm master. Obviously, the owner of this jade talisman was definitely a quasi-emperor. Refining a protective jade talisman was not an easy task. To a large extent, it required the consumption of one's blood essence in order to refine it. Therefore, the more powerful a martial artist was, the less likely they would refine protective jade talismans. Chu Fengmian did not expect that the young master of the Hua family would have a protective jade talisman refined by a quasi-emperor. Originally, Chu Fengmian wanted to kill the young master of the Hua clan, but he didn't expect him to survive. This is the protective jade talisman that the great elder gave me. The young master of the Hua family also revealed a look of joy. He had thought that he was going to die for sure, but he had used the protective talisman to escape this calamity. Brat, you're finished. The experts of my Hua clan are coming. It'll be your time to die. The young master of the Hua family looked at Chu Fengmian and said ferociously. Since the protective jade talisman had been activated, the experts of the Hua clan should already know that he was in danger. As long as he used the protective jade talisman to delay for a while, when the experts of the Hua clan arrived, it would be the time of Chu Fengmian's death. Chu Fengmian knew what the young master of the Hua clan was thinking. However, he had to go all out and kill the young master of the Hua clan first. Since the young master of the Hua clan had such a precious jade talisman, it was very likely that he had even more good things on him. Let's see if a mere jade talisman can stop me. Chu Fengmian looked at the young master of the Hua clan and sneered. After all, the protective jade talisman was only an external force. After blocking Chu Fengmian's attack, its power had already been reduced by half. After being bombarded by Chu Fengmian a few more times, it would definitely shatter. Chu Fengmian did not hesitate. With a thought, he condensed the Battle Dragon Claw and suddenly attacked the young master of the Hua clan. The Battle Dragon Claw swept out and heavily slammed into the transparent barrier. At the same time, Chu Fengmian could clearly feel that the barrier's power was constantly being depleted. The barrier that was used to protect the young master of the Hua clan began to weaken. Shatter! Rumble! The 300 formations of the Battle Dragon Claw were activated at the same time. With the momentum of a thunderbolt, it fell from the sky and landed on the barrier. Countless cracks appeared on the barrier. Soon, the cracks kept expanding and then it shattered. The jade talisman was broken by Chu Fengmian on the spot. What? The young master of the Hua clan turned pale when he saw the jade talisman shattered. This was a protective jade talisman, refined by the great elder of the Hua clan, a quasi-emperor expert. How could it be broken just like that? One should know that the power of the jade talisman was enough to withstand the joint attack of several supreme ancestors for at least 2 hours. 2 hours was enough for the experts of the Hua clan to arrive. Therefore, the young master of the Hua clan thought that even if he could not delay Chu Fengmian for 2 hours, an hour was enough for the experts of the Hua clan to arrive. However, he did not expect that the jade talisman would be shattered by Chu Fengmian in less than a minute. Let go of His Highness! Elder Qi and Elder Qing suddenly attacked Chu Fengmian. They wanted to take advantage of the opportunity when Chu Fengmian was not paying attention to them to launch a sneak attack on him. However, when their power bombarded Chu Fengmian's body, a layer of golden dragon scales suddenly appeared 3 inches away from Chu Fengmian's body. These golden dragon scales were the ancient dragon emperor body. They were protecting Chu Fengmian's body at all times. The strength of the two of them was unable to even shake the golden dragon scale at all when they smashed into it. Two good-for-nothings? How dare you launch a sneak attack on me? Die! Chu Fengmian snorted coldly. Chu Fengmian had almost forgotten about these two little guys. However, they still dared to launch a sneak attack on him. With this cold snort, the Battle Dragon Claw was formed. It descended from the sky and swept across. Elder Qing and Elder Qi's bodies were crushed by the Battle Dragon Claw. They died on the spot. On the other side, Chu Fengmian did not stay idle. He grabbed the young master of the Hua clan. Suddenly, a surge of spiritual energy entered the young master of the Hua clan and investigated his body thoroughly. It's the sleeping bloodline? The young master of the Hua clan has a trace of the soaring serpent's bloodline? Chapter 1078. The Hua family was one of the 8 great imperial families of the ancient Snake Country. Any disciple of the Hua family could easily enter the life and death realm, or even the life and death step. However, the young master of the Hua family was only at the peak of the divine power realm. He hadn't even entered the life and death realm. With such strength, he could only be considered trash in the Hua family. Therefore, the fact that he could become the young master of the Hua family was what surprised Chu Fengmian the most. The protective jade amulet proved his identity as the young master of the Hua family. At least in the Gu family, he was an important figure. After probing the bloodline of the Hua family's young master, all of Chu Fengmian's doubts were suddenly resolved. Chu Fengmian actually felt an ancient power from the young master's bloodline. It was the power of an innate divine beast, the soaring serpent. The young master of the Hua family had inherited a wisp of the bloodline of the ancestor of all snakes, the soaring serpent. Although the young master of the Hua family wasn't strong right now, the soaring serpent power in his bloodline was still in a deep slumber. Once the soaring serpent bloodline in the young master of the Hua family awakened, his strength would skyrocket. He might even be able to break through to the Emperor realm with just a wisp of the soaring serpent bloodline. This wasn't an exaggeration. After all, the soaring serpent bloodline was the bloodline of an innate divine beast. Even a wisp of it was more noble than the bloodlines of all the demon gods in the ancient monster continent. However, the young master of the Hua family had fallen into Chu Fengmian's hands. Even if his soaring serpent bloodline had awakened, he wouldn't be able to escape. Soaring serpent bloodline, I didn't expect you to send me such a big gift. Chu Fengmian looked at the young master of the Hua family and couldn't help but grin. The young master of the Hua family had come to find trouble with him. He had especially come to offer his soaring serpent bloodline to Chu Fengmian. The power of the soaring serpent bloodline wasn't inferior to many innate divine bodies. Of course, Chu Fengmian wouldn't let it go. How do you know that I have the soaring serpent bloodline? The young master of the Hua family paled when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. Not many people in the Gu family knew about his soaring serpent bloodline. Furthermore, Chu Fengmian was an outsider. Before his bloodline awakened, even a sovereign venerate might not be able to tell. But now, Chu Fengmian's words had broken the Ting serpent bloodline of the Hua family's young master. There's nothing in the world that can be hidden from me. Chu Fengmian sneered. Hand it over, bloodline deprivation. Chu Fengmian condensed spiritual energy in his palm and suddenly clawed at the young master of the Hua clan. In Chu Fengmian's palm, the body of the young master of the Hua clan was unceasingly twisting. In the eyes of an outsider, the young master of the Hua clan was in agony. However, in reality, only the Hua family's young master knew exactly how frightening the pain was. His bloodline was about to leave his body under the power of Chu Fengmian's claw. It wasn't just pain, it was torture. Once his bloodline was taken away, the young master of the Hua clan would have no power in the future, let alone his status as the young master of the Hua clan. Even if he was lucky enough to survive, he could only spend the rest of his life as a cripple. Am I really going to die today? I, Hua Lin, born with the Ting serpent bloodline, am actually going to die in the hands of this person? The young master of the Hua family, Hua Lin, was terrified. He now regretted provoking Chu Fengmian. Just as Chu Fengmian's power was about to take away the Ting serpent bloodline of the Hua clan's young master, the sky changed. Suddenly, the sky changed color, and a loud shout suddenly sounded from the sky. Who is it? How dare you kill my Hua clan's disciple? Along with this shout, the young master of the Hua clan's expression suddenly changed. He was extremely excited, as if he had caught a life-saving straw. He raised his head and looked up. In the sky, a 1,000-meter-long crack tore the sky apart. In this 1,000-meter-long crack, a golden figure descended. Along with the appearance of the golden figure, there was also a terrifying emperor pressure. This golden figure exuded a power that only an Emperor Realm Master could possess, Emperor Pressure. Great Elder! When Old Qing and Old Qi saw the appearance of the golden figure, their faces also revealed joy. The true master of their Hua clan, the Hua clan's Great Elder, had finally arrived. This Emperor Pressure was enough to prove his strength. He was at least a half-step Emperor Realm Quasi-Emperor. Great Elder, quickly come and save me. The young master of the Hua clan, who was in Chu Fengmian's palm, hurriedly knelt on the ground and shouted loudly. He originally thought that he was going to die, but the appearance of the Great Elder gave him a glimmer of hope. Even his gaze towards Chu Fengmian became ferocious. Now that the Hua clan's Quasi-Emperor had arrived, it was time to kill Chu Fengmian. You two pieces of trash! How could you put Lin in such a dangerous situation? The Hua clan's Great Elder condensed his figure, looked at Old Qing and Old Qi and said coldly, "Scram back to the Hua clan and be grounded for 100 years. In this 100 years, properly hone your strength, so as not to disgrace the Hua clan. Yes. When old Qing and old Qi heard the words of the Hua clan's great elder, they did not refute and nodded respectfully. The words of a quasi-emperor were a supreme order to the two of them. They could not refute it. The young master of the Hua clan looked at the Hua clan's great elder, who was now in the air, and hurriedly said, "Great elder, quickly kill this person. First elder, quickly kill this person. This person has the sovereign demon god's blood essence." What? The emperor monster god's blood essence? You're saying that the emperor dragon's blood is in this person's hands? Hearing this, the expression of the Hua clan's great elder suddenly changed, and he looked at Chu Fengmian. "Boy, hand over the emperor monster god's blood essence. This kind of treasure is not something you can possess. Also, you've killed countless disciples of my Hua clan, which is already a capital offense. Since you have some talent, become a servant of my Hua clan and work for my Hua clan for the rest of your life. This emperor can spare you this once." The Hua clan's great elder looked at Chu Fengmian and slowly said. The meaning of his words was as if he wanted Chu Fengmian to submit, as if he was sparing Chu Fengmian's life. With his status as a quasi-emperor, anyone who had not stepped into the emperor realm was an ant. Not killing an ant was already being merciful. Even if he was just an incarnation, it would be a piece of cake for him to kill Ancestor Wu, who was in the immortal realm. A mere clone dares to be impudent in front of me? Chapter 1079. If a quasi-emperor really came, Chu Fengmian would still be afraid. This was already the limit. A quasi-emperor was a threat to Chu Fengmian. However, Chu Fengmian had also killed a quasi-emperor before. As long as Chu Fengmian was willing to reveal his trump card, killing a quasi-emperor would not be difficult. Although a quasi-emperor was enough to make Chu Fengmian wary, it was not enough to make him feel fear. Furthermore, this Hua clan first elder was indeed a quasi-emperor. However, this was not his main body but a clone formed by a strand of energy. Quasi-emperors spent almost all their time cultivating. In order not to be disturbed by mundane matters, they would choose to use their energy to form a clone. The strength of this clone was not even 30% of the Hua clan first elder's strength. Yet, he dared to threaten Chu Fengmian? Not to mention a mere clone of yours, even if your main body was here, I would still casually kill you. This clone seems to have gathered a lot of your energy. Since that is the case, then it will be destroyed here today. Chu Fengmian sneered as he looked at the Hua clan first elder. Arrogant! Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, the Hua clan first elder flew into a rage. Clumps of flames filled the sky, forming a sea of fire. The sky turned into a sea of fire because of the Hua clan first elder's rage. This was the power of an emperor, the power to control the world. Even when facing a quasi-emperor's clone, any old ancestor would choose to submit obediently. Even a clone with 30% of a quasi-emperor's strength was an unparalleled existence to anyone below quasi-emperor. Chu Fengmian's words were like an ant provoking a divine dragon. If the Hua clan first elder could tolerate this, then he would not be a quasi-emperor. Brat, it looks like you have not seen the power of a quasi-emperor before. That's why you are so arrogant. Ignorant brat, I will let you experience this emperor's power today. A emperor is not someone a heavenly fate realm brat like you can provoke. The Hua clan first elder roared. Under his control, the sea of fire in the sky turned into a fire snake and lunged at Chu Fengmian. Just this fire snake condensed from flames contained some emperor's might. The strength of a quasi-emperor was not limited to their strength alone. This emperor's aura had a natural restraining effect on all cultivators and demon gods below the emperor realm. Just sensing this emperor's aura was enough to deter countless cultivators and demon gods from attacking. This was a fear that came from the bottom of his heart. It was simply impossible to overcome. If it was any other supreme ancestor, they would tremble in fear the moment they felt the great elder of the Hua clan's attack. They would not dare to go against a quasi-emperor. However, Chu Fengmian only revealed a disdainful smile. Indeed, even with Chu Fengmian's tenacious mind, he would be affected the first time he encountered the Emperor's aura. However, ever since Chu Fengmian had slain the heavenly demon's supremacy, the Emperor's might no longer had any effect on him. Chu Fengmian had even killed a true quasi-emperor before, so why would he be afraid of a mere Emperor's aura? Battle Dragon Claw. In the face of the incoming fire snake, Chu Fengmian's mind flickered and the battle dragon claw condensed in the air before him. Break! In an instant, the battle dragon claw swept across the sky and bombarded the fire snake with its power. Before the fire snake could get close to Chu Fengmian, it was swept away by the battle dragon claw and shattered on the spot. How is this possible? He actually blocked the Great Elder's attack? Elder Qing shouted in disbelief when he saw this scene. The moment the Hua clan's Great Elder attacked, he was so frightened that he knelt on the ground and trembled when he sensed the Hua clan's Great Elder's status. However, not only did Chu Fengmian dare to attack the Hua clan's Great Elder, but he also easily blocked the Great Elder's attack. A heavenly mandate emperor was able to contend against a quasi-emperor? This was something that had never happened in the history of the ancient monster continent. The scene before them was simply beyond their understanding. Who are you? How can you block my emperor's aura? The Hua clan's Great Elder was stunned when he saw Chu Fengmian attack. In his opinion, the emperor's aura alone was enough to make Chu Fengmian kneel on the ground and not dare to resist. He never expected that Chu Fengmian was not afraid at all and easily destroyed the fire snake with a single attack. This power and this wisdom were not something that a ruler of the heavenly mandate realm could possess. You keep calling yourself emperor. A mere quasi-emperor is not even qualified to be called a sovereign in the past. How dare you call yourself emperor? Chu Fengmian said coldly. Since you've already attacked, it's time for me to attack. Condense. The battle dragon claw's power of 300 formations had been fully restored. Following Chu Fengmian's words, it suddenly condensed all of them. The power of the 300 formations burst out at the same time and strengthened the battle dragon claw. In the air, it blasted towards the Hua clan's Great Elder. The Hua clan's Great Elder could clearly feel the power contained in Chu Fengmian's battle dragon claw. The power of this claw was not inferior to his own strength. A heavenly mandate realm cultivator was actually able to unleash power comparable to a quasi-emperor? No matter what, the Hua clan's Great Elder would never believe such a thing. However, this scene was happening right before his eyes. He racked his brains but still could not understand how Chu Fengmian could be so powerful. However, there was no time for him to continue pondering. The battle dragon claw swept over, and he could only mobilize his spiritual energy to block it. Flame City. The sea of flames that filled the sky all gathered towards the Hua clan's Great Elder. They condensed beside him and gradually formed a flame city. The Hua clan's Great Elder was located in the heart of the flame city and was protected by countless flames. The flames that surrounded the flame city were not ordinary flames. They were the purest demonic flames. Ordinary cultivators would die upon contact with them. The Hua clan's Great Elder might have condensed the flame city to ask Chu Fengmian to stop. If Chu Fengmian really wanted to kill him in the flame city, he would have to pay a great price. Moreover, the Hua clan's Great Elder before him was only a clone. The Hua clan's Great Elder believed that Chu Fengmian would not do such a thing. Chapter 1080. Are you daydreaming? Chu Fengmian rolled his eyes when he heard the words of the Hua clan's Great Elder. On the other side of the phone, what did you say? The Hua clan's Great Elder was originally full of confidence as he waited for Chu Fengmian's reply. In his opinion, Chu Fengmian would definitely agree to his conditions. After all, even a quasi-emperor would have to consider carefully before going against the Hua clan. With his power as a quasi-emperor, it was easy for him to force Chu Fengmian to take a step back. He did not believe that Chu Fengmian would be willing to go against the Hua clan. As such, he was stunned when he heard Chu Fengmian's reply. He had never expected Chu Fengmian to give such a reply. I mean, are you daydreaming? I didn't expect that your ears are also damaged besides your brain. Chu Fengmian sneered. A mere quasi-emperor clone wants to force me to take a step back? Even your Hua clan's patriarch is not qualified to do so. Who do you think you are? Today I'll kill your clone. Let's see how long you can be arrogant. Chu Fengmian's body moved as he spoke. The power of the battle dragon claw had been fully accumulated. It suddenly exploded less than 10 meters away from the Flame City. The power of the 300 arrays was added to the battle dragon claw as it clawed at the raging Fire City. Courting death? Seeing Chu Fengmian's sudden attack, the Hua clan's great elder's eyes flashed with contempt. Attacking the Flame City was simply courting death. The flames of the Flame City were strong enough to burn a quasi-emperor, not to mention Chu Fengmian. However, in the next moment, his confidence was suddenly shattered. The War Dragon's claw continued to bombard the city of raging fire. It did not stop at all and continued to bombard it. Countless flames stained the War Dragon claw. However, the burning flames were unable to harm the War Dragon claw at all. The Battle Dragon claw continued to attack, as if it was unstoppable. In the next moment, it tore open the heart of the City of Flames. The gigantic City of Flames was torn apart by the Battle Dragon's claw. Under the horrified gaze, the Hua clan's great elder's body was suddenly caught by the Battle Dragon claw. Then, like the Hua clan's young master, he was easily pinched in the palm of Chu Fengmian's hand. How is this possible? How can you not be afraid of flames? The Hua clan's great elder was still in disbelief when he was pinched in Chu Fengmian. He was a quasi-emperor realm master. Even if it's a clone, killing an immortal realm ancestor Wu, it would be as easy as crushing an ant. Ancestor. He clan's ancestors, even if he was of his master. His master. Xiao Chun had never heard of such a person in the ancient Fei continent. A dragon race bloodline in the Divine Dragon Empire. Did he come from there? The Hua clan's great elder thought about Chu Fengmian's identity. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something and shouted at Chu Fengmian. Boy, I know where you came from. Even if you came from there, according to the rules, you are not qualified to intervene in the affairs of our ancient snake country. Aren't you afraid of being punished for doing this? Where? Punished? Chu Fengmian was confused by the Hua clan's great elder's words. He did not know what he meant. However, it sounded like the Hua clan's great elder regarded Chu Fengmian as a member of a great force. Regardless, it was not a bad thing for Chu Fengmian that the Hua clan's great elder regarded Chu Fengmian as a member of a great force. Not being able to guess Chu Fengmian's identity was better for Chu Fengmian. Punished? It's just a trivial member of the Hua clan. It's nothing. There's no need to talk nonsense. Die. Chu Fengmian shouted coldly. It seemed like he did not want to continue talking to the Hua clan's great elder. He suddenly attacked and grabbed the Hua clan's great elder. As Chu Fengmian's hand tightened, the Hua clan's great elder was also squeezed in Chu Fengmian's hand. Bang! In the end, the Hua clan's great elder was crushed in Chu Fengmian's hand. Only his essence blood was left, which Chu Fengmian took away. The great elder died just like that? How is this possible? The great elder is a quasi-emperor. How could he be defeated by this boy? The Hua clan's young master, Elder Qing, and Elder Qi were dumbstruck. They were so stunned that they even forgot to run away. The Hua clan's great elder was a quasi-emperor. Even if it was just a clone, it should have been easy for him to save them and suppress Chu Fengmian. Who would have thought that the life-saving straw they had waited so hard for would be killed so easily by Chu Fengmian? Do you really think a mere clone of a quasi-emperor can save you? Die. Chu Fengmian glanced at the Hua clan's young master, Elder Qing, and Elder Qi then. He immediately attacked. His palm swept across. Under the cover of this palm, even the sky was covered. For a moment, darkness filled the sky. Not good. Let's go. Old Shi and Old Qing no longer cared about the young master of the Hua clan, who had fallen into Chu Fengmian's hands, when they saw that the situation was far from good. Their bodies moved, transforming into two streaks of light as they attempted to escape into the void. However, Chu Fengmian's speed was much faster than the two of them. The moment the two of them wanted to escape, Chu Fengmian had already activated his spiritual energy. Under Chu Fengmian's power, the surrounding space was completely sealed. No matter how the two of them tried to escape, they could not escape from Chu Fengmian's palm. Rumble. Elder Qi and Elder Qing died again. The effect of the soul crystal could only save them once. This time, no matter what the Hua clan did, it would not be able to save them again. You don't kill me. I'm the Hua clan's young master. I can give you anything you want. I can go back to the Hua clan and persuade our experts not to kill you. The Hua clan's young master was completely scared out of his wits after seeing Chu Fengmian kill the Hua clan's great elder's clone. He looked at Chu Fengmian and said with a trembling voice. However, a strange light flashed in the Hua clan's young master's eyes. He was lying. He believed that Chu Fengmian would not kill him. After all, a living Hua clan's young master was much better than a dead person. Chapter 1081. You really dare to kill me? The young master of the Hua clan watched as Chu Fengmian's sword pierced through his chest. His eyes were still filled with disbelief. This was completely different from what he had imagined. Too much nonsense. Chu Fengmian pulled out his sword. To Chu Fengmian, the death of the young master of the Hua clan would be more beneficial to him. The soaring serpent bloodline in his body was what Chu Fengmian needed. As for his identity, it was meaningless to Chu Fengmian. The battle just now might have attracted nearby experts. Let's leave first. Chu Fengmian looked around and waved his hand. The blood essence of the young master of the Hua clan was caught by Chu Fengmian. Then, Chu Fengmian's figure disappeared on the spot. Other than the traces on the ground, there was almost no way to tell that such a bitter battle had already taken place here. Damn it! Damn it! Someone actually dared to kill my clone and Lin. I must kill that brat. In a tall palace in the imperial capital, a furious roar suddenly erupted. The old man in the palace was the quasi-emperor who had fought with Chu Fengmian before, the Hua clan's grand elder. His face was filled with extreme anger as he cursed loudly. Chu Fengmian didn't bother to talk nonsense with him and directly killed his clone. This was a great loss to him. One must know that a quasi-emperor's clone was refined with his own blood. That clone contained 30% of the Hua clan's grand elder's strength. Now that Chu Fengmian had killed his clone, it meant that the Hua clan's grand elder had lost 30% of his strength. For him, this was a loss that he might not be able to recover even after hundreds or thousands of years. He would need to spend a lot of wealth to make up for it. It was no wonder that the Hua clan's grand elder was so angry. However, this person's strength is too strange. Although he's only at the heavenly fate realm, he's not any weaker than me in terms of strength. It won't be easy for me to deal with him alone. I must inform the others. The great elder of the Hua family didn't rush over to Chu Fengmian's side to seek revenge. The great elder of the Hua family was not a reckless person. He could clearly feel that Chu Fengmian had not expended much energy to kill his clone. In fact, it would be extremely difficult for him to resist the battle dragon's claw with his own body. It would be the stupidest thing for him to do to Chu Fengmian alone. However, that brat is most likely someone from that place. If we are able to kill or capture him, it will be of great use to our Hua family. Suddenly, the Hua family grand elder's eyes flickered, as if he was thinking about something. At the same time, 2 jade talismans flew out from his palms. It didn't take long for 2 figures to follow the path of the jade talisman. These 2 figures were one old and one young. Their auras were not any weaker than the Hua family's great elder. They were also 2 quasi-emperors. Head consecrator, patriarch, you're here. When the Hua family's great elder saw the 2 figures, He stood up and greeted them. These two people were the other two quasi-emperors of the Huo family, the Huo family's head consecrator and patriarch. The three of them were the true core of the Huo family. They were also the reason why the Huo family was one of the 8 great imperial families. The three quasi-emperors were enough to establish the Huo family's status. Great Elder, what's going on? You said that Lin is dead? Didn't you refine a protective jade talisman for Lin? How could he have been killed? The Huo family's patriarch hurriedly asked the Huo family's great elder. He had learned about Huo Lin's death from the jade talisman. That was why he hurried over. Huo Lin was the young master of the Huo family. He was an innate divine beast and a genius with the bloodline of the soaring serpent. His death was enough to shake the entire Huo family. Lin encountered someone in the desolate region. The Huo family's great elder gave a detailed account of what had happened. The Huo family's head consecrator and Huo family's head consecrator listened quietly. Originally, the two of them were extremely angry. However, the more they listened, the more strange their expressions became. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. What did you say? That little brat is only at the Heaven's Mandate realm. How could he be on par with us? Are you sure you didn't see wrongly? Halfway through, the Huo family's head consecrator interrupted. A Heaven's Mandate realm cultivator was on par with them in terms of strength? One had to know that they were all quasi-emperors, existences who had stepped into the emperor realm. A Heaven's Mandate realm cultivator was considered the most talented and monstrous cultivator in the ancient monster continent. It was already incredible that he could be on par with old ancestor Wu, who was at the 9th step of the life and death step. This was a gap of 2 realms. The difference between a quasi-emperor and an immortal realm was like the difference between heaven and earth. They couldn't be compared at all. Throughout the history of the 9 territories, such a thing had never happened. How could they not doubt the Huo family's great elder's words? Did I see wrongly? Even my incarnation died at the hands of this person. Could it be that my power is also fake? Hearing the Huo family's head consecrator's words, the Huo family's great elder's face turned gloomy. The Huo family's head consecrator and head consecrator hurriedly looked at the Huo family's great elder. Looking at his aura, their eyes were filled with shock. They could see that the Huo family's great elder's aura was indeed much weaker than before. This could only be possible if his clone was destroyed. Then, all of this is real? But it's impossible for such a person to exist in the ancient snake country. Otherwise, he would have been famous long ago. Even the divine dragon country and the canopy country wouldn't have such a genius. Otherwise we would have known, the Huo family's head said doubtfully. Even if such a genius existed, he should have been famous in the ancient monster continent. How could he be unknown? Even after the battle, the Huo family's great elder didn't know Chu Fengmian's identity. Apart from the 3 great countries, there is another place that might have such a genius. Suddenly, a strange light flashed in the Huo family's great elder's eyes. Another place? You mean? The Huo family's head consecrator and head consecrator seemed to have guessed something when they heard the Huo family's great elder's words. If this person really came from there, wouldn't it be greatly beneficial for us to capture him? The Huo family's head consecrator and head consecrator's eyes flashed with a trace of passion. Our Huo family can't interfere in this matter. However, there are many ways to kill a quasi-emperor. Let's go. Chapter 1082. Chu Fengmian was sitting cross-legged in a cave in the mountains of the desolate domain. A lump of blood was floating in front of him. This floating mass of blood was not the usual bright red. Instead, it was gray and chaotic. Chu Fengmian could faintly feel an extremely ancient power within it. It was innate power. This lump of chaotic blood was the soaring serpent bloodline that Chu Fengmian had extracted from the young master of the Huo clan. Although it was less than 1% of the true soaring serpent blood essence, it was still enough to affect the power of this blood and turn it gray. The power of this soaring serpent bloodline is really powerful. It's even more abundant than the innate power of the sovereign demon god's blood essence that I obtained before. Chu Fengmian sat where he was and looked at the lump of blood. He could not help but sigh as he felt the innate power in it. The drop of sovereign demon god's blood essence that Chu Fengmian obtained before also contained a strand of primogenitor Tianlong's blood essence. Therefore, Chu Fengmian was able to absorb a portion of the innate power from it. Chu Fengmian could tell that the lump of blood before him contained much more innate power than the sovereign demon god's blood essence. Fortunately, the young master of the Hu clan did not awaken his soaring serpent bloodline. Otherwise, it would be much more difficult to kill him. Once the power of the soaring serpent bloodline is awakened, it would not be difficult for him to step into the quasi-emperor realm. Chu Fengmian muttered to himself. He was also glad that the young master of the Hu clan did not awaken his soaring serpent bloodline. Once the soaring serpent bloodline was awakened, the young master of the Hu clan's strength would increase by leaps and bounds. If Chu Fengmian wanted to kill him, it would not be so easy. However, the soaring serpent bloodline now belonged to Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian had completely extracted the soaring serpent bloodline from the young master of the Hu clan. The innate power contained in the soaring serpent bloodline did not leak out at all. All of it was left in the soaring serpent bloodline. However, looking at the lump of soaring serpent bloodline before him, Chu Fengmian felt somewhat awkward. The soaring innate divine beast bloodline contained an inconceivable power. No matter who obtained it, they would benefit greatly. If it were any other cultivator who obtained this innate divine beast's bloodline, they would most likely choose to quickly devour and refine it into their own bloodline. However, Chu Fengmian was different from other martial artists. The battle dragon art that Chu Fengmian cultivated possessed an extremely powerful bloodline power. In addition, Chu Fengmian's bloodline had already assimilated a portion of Tianlong's power. If the essence blood before him had contained the power of progenitor Tianlong, Chu Fengmian would have devoured it without hesitation. However, it contained the power of the soaring serpent. Although Tianlong and Ting Shi were both connate divine beasts, their powers were completely different. If the two kinds of power were to merge into Chu Fengmian's body at the same time, they might conflict with each other. At that time, Chu Fengmian would be in trouble. Ordinary power was still manageable, but Tianlong and the soaring serpent were connate god-beasts. Chu Fengmian couldn't guarantee that he could suppress them. That was why Chu Fengmian was in such a dilemma. He didn't know what to do. I didn't expect you to encounter such good fortune twice in a row. Xing Xian was speechless at Chu Fengmian's concern. If news of encountering a bloodline that contained the power of connate divine beasts were to spread, it would be the envy of many. If others saw Chu Fengmian's dilemma after encountering it twice in a row, they would want to beat him to death. However, Chu Fengmian's worries were not misplaced. If the two kinds of power were to merge into Chu Fengmian's body at the same time, it would be fine. However, if the two kinds of power were to conflict with each other after entering Chu Fengmian's body, it was very likely that Chu Fengmian would face the danger of exploding. Although the soaring serpent bloodline was a great opportunity, the slightest carelessness could lead to eternal damnation. As far as I know, there is indeed a possibility of success if you merge the bloodlines of two connate divine beasts at the same time. Xing Xian was silent for a moment. You can choose to condense a second origin source. Second origin source? This term was unfamiliar to Chu Fengmian. At least, Chu Fengmian had never heard of this term from other places. Second origin source? What's that? Chu Fengmian was clear about the origin source. It was the origin source of life of a martial artist. Chu Fengmian's origin source was his origin source, sword origin. However, a martial artist should only be able to condense one origin source. In the divine power realm, once the origin source was condensed, it could not be changed. Second origin source? Could it be that this origin source could be condensed into a second origin source? Of course, ordinary origin sources can only be condensed into one origin source. However, in the ancient era, there was a great sect called Thousand Spirit Sect that practiced a secret technique to condense the origin source. It allowed one to possess two origin sources at the same time. However, it's not difficult to condense a second origin source. At the very least, you need to possess the power that is comparable to the first origin source to condense the second origin source. Otherwise, the newly condensed origin source will be devoured by the sword origin in your body. Xing Xian said slowly. However, you have the soaring serpent bloodline and the primogenitor Tianlong bloodline in your body. It's not impossible for you to condense a origin source that is comparable to the sword origin. Once the condensation is completed, it's equivalent to possessing two origin sources at the same time. There's such a secret technique? Chu Fengmian gasped in amazement after hearing Xing Xian's words. Even with his knowledge and experience, he had never thought that it was possible to condense two origin sources at the same time. A martial artist could only possess one origin source. This was the truth in the 9 regions. No one dared to question this truth. Chu Fengmian had only condensed his sword origin and had never thought about this matter. However, after seeing the secret technique that Xing Xian had passed to Chu Fengmian realized that there was such a method to condense the origin source. The origin of my sword origin is the power of creation, which belongs to the innate power. However, the soaring serpent bloodline and primogenitor Tianlong's power are also innate powers. It's not impossible to condense them. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered as he considered the possibility of condensing a second origin source. If Chu Fengmian were to recklessly refine the soaring serpent bloodline, he would never dare to do so. The risk was too great. Chapter 1083. Xing Xian, how do I condense the second origin of life? Chu Fengmian was not a hesitant person. Once the second origin of life was condensed, it would be greatly beneficial to Chu Fengmian. The source of life was a martialist source. Although Chu Fengmian's boundary had come from the battle dragon art, his source of life was still his sword origin. No matter how strong the battle dragon art was, it was only his bloodline and not his origin. Once the second origin of life was condensed, it would mean that Chu Fengmian could possess the power of two origin sources at the same time. It was simply shocking. Chu Fengmian had to seize this opportunity. Are you sure you want to condense it? Condensing the second origin of life is not a dangerous matter. 9 out of 10 people will die. You have to think carefully. Xing Xian frowned and said when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. He was just giving Chu Fengmian an idea. He just wanted Chu Fengmian to think about it, but he did not expect Chu Fengmian to directly choose to condense it. It was as if danger did not exist in front of Chu Fengmian. I know. Chu Fengmian was naturally clear about the dangers of condensing the second origin of life. If such a secret technique could be done so easily, it would have been spread throughout the 9 regions. Now it seemed that the difficulty of condensing the second origin of life was not inferior to the difficulty of the chaotic 5 Emperors' art. Therefore, although it was powerful, there were very few people who dared to try it. That was why it was rarely known. Since he wanted to possess power, he naturally had to pay a price. Chu Fengmian was very clear about this point, and he had no intention of backing down. Hearing Chu Fengmian's answer, Xing Xian sighed. He moved his mind and a cultivation technique appeared in Chu Fengmian's mind. This cultivation technique did not have a name, but it recorded the method of condensing the second origin of life. Although the method of condensing the second origin of life is simple, the person who came up with it is definitely a peerless genius. The method of condensing the second origin of life was simpler than Chu Fengmian had imagined. It was the same as the first time he had condensed his source of life. He had to condense another energy. However, this time around, he had to maintain a balance. If the condensed power was too small, it would be directly swallowed by the natal sword spirit in Chu Fengmian's body, and all the previous efforts would be wasted. If one's power was too condensed, it would take the initiative. At that time, there was an 80 to 90% chance that one's body would explode and die. Although it was simple, the actual danger was not any weaker than the primal chaos 5 Emperor's art. The person who could think of such a cultivation technique was definitely a genius, or rather, a madman. Only a lunatic could think of such a monstrous cultivation method. There's no one within 100 miles of here. This is the perfect place to condense. Chu Fengmian condensed his spiritual power and set up countless restrictions around his mountain range to protect it. Chu Fengmian grabbed the soaring serpent bloodline and devoured it without hesitation. Boom! When the soaring serpent bloodline entered Chu Fengmian's body, it suddenly exploded. The Xiantian power exploded in Chu Fengmian's body, almost shattering it. Although the Xiantian power was powerful, it was extremely difficult to control it. The majority of cultivators who could control the Xiantian power were born with the Xiantian constitution. The Xiantian power grew with them, so there was no danger. The soaring serpent bloodline in the body of the Hua clan's young master was also born with it. Furthermore, it had been in hibernation, so there was no danger. But now, Chu Fengmian wanted to devour the soaring serpent bloodline and use its power for his own use. This action was like walking on a tightrope. If Chu Fengmian was careless, the Xiantian power would be enough to burst his body, causing him to explode and die. Even Chu Fengmian felt a sense of danger at the first moment. Even with the toughness of his body, all kinds of cracks appeared on his face. Fortunately, the divine tree's power came over in time, stabilizing Chu Fengmian's body. This was only the first impact of the soaring serpent bloodline. The Xiantian divine beast's bloodline was extremely precious. If it was subdued and controlled, it would definitely retaliate. With the current power of the divine tree, it was impossible for it to resist the power of the soaring serpent bloodline. Thinking of this, Chu Fengmian suddenly waved his hand and a lump of blood essence flew towards the divine tree. Seeing the lump of blood essence flying towards it, the divine tree was overjoyed and started devouring it. Seeing this, Chu Fengmian felt a little heartache. This lump of blood essence was none other than the Hua clan's great elder's blood essence. This lump of blood essence contained 1/3 of the Hua clan's great elder's power. Its power was self-evident. Originally, Chu Fengmian had planned to use this blood essence when he was preparing to break through to the heavenly realm. But now, in order to condense the second origin source, the divine tree had to be able to withstand the impact of the soaring serpent bloodline. This left Chu Fengmian with no other choice. He could only give this blood essence to the divine tree and let it devour it. However, this lump of blood essence was not wasted. After the divine tree devoured this lump of blood essence, its power underwent an earth-shaking change. It was more than 50% stronger than before. Although this lump of blood essence only contained 1/3 of the power of a true quasi-emperor, it was still the blood essence of a venerable emperor. The blood essence of several tens of immortal realm experts was much stronger than the blood essence of a supreme ancestor. It was enough to cause the divine tree to undergo an earth-shaking change after devouring it. However, the change in the divine tree was only a quantitative change. It was still not enough to cause a qualitative change in the divine tree's power. Chu Fengmian felt that only a complete quasi-emperor's blood essence would be able to cause a qualitative change in the divine tree's power. Of course, Chu Fengmian did not care about that now. First, he had to devour the soaring serpent bloodline and condense the second origin source. This was the most important thing for Chu Fengmian. Rumble! As the divine tree's power increased, the impact of the soaring serpent bloodline on Chu Fengmian's body also weakened. After all, the soaring serpent bloodline was extremely thin. The true power of the soaring serpent bloodline was less than 1%. That was why Chu Fengmian was able to endure it. If it was a pure and complete innate divine beast's blood essence, Chu Fengmian would die if he were to rashly devour it. Chapter 1084. Chu Fengmian stripped the spiritual power from his bloodline and transformed it into the shape of a dragon. However, the dragon looked extremely illusory and was shrouded in a layer of gray mist, making it impossible to see through. The illusory dragon was the appearance of progenitor Tianlong. Chu Fengmian had stripped the power of progenitor Tianlong from his body and condensed it into the illusory dragon. Given the power of Tianlong in Chu Fengmian's body, he couldn't really condense progenitor Tianlong's appearance. Therefore, the illusory dragon looked like an illusory dragon. At the same time, Chu Fengmian continued to absorb the power of the Ting serpent bloodline beside the illusory dragon, condensing a serpent with wings on its back. It was the appearance of the Ting serpent. Chu Fengmian had extracted the power of the two innate divine beasts and condensed them into their respective forms. Now that Chu Fengmian had extracted the two powers, it was time to condense the second origin of life. Rumble! Chu Fengmian's body suddenly opened up a new open space with a burst of spiritual power, creating a square on the other side of the divine vein. The two innate divine beasts were condensed by Chu Fengmian's mind and immediately entered the square. With a boom, they flew up into the air. If Chu Fengmian wanted to condense a second origin of life, the soaring serpent bloodline alone would not be enough. Therefore, Chu Fengmian made up his mind to fuse the power of his bloodline's progenitor, the sky dragon, into this origin of life. If the second origin of life was successfully condensed with the power of two innate divine beasts, it would mean that Chu Fengmian could control the power of two innate divine beasts at the same time. Even martial artists with innate divine beast bloodlines wouldn't be Chu Fengmian's match. Heaven and Earth Splitter. Second origin of life, condense. Chu Fengmian suddenly shouted the moment the power of the two innate divine beasts was condensed to the limit. These two forces suddenly converged in Chu Fengmian's body. They were about to form a new life source in Chu Fengmian. Almost at the same time, a sharp sword radiance erupted from Chu Fengmian's body. The sword ray's target was the power of the two connate divine beasts. Two tigers cannot live on one mountain. The origin of Chu Fengmian's body was originally the natal sword origin condensed from the power of creation. Now that there was another power that wanted to carve up Chu Fengmian's body, the natal sword origin was naturally unwilling. The sword of creation was about to kill the two innate divine beasts on the spot. The two Xiantian divine beasts were not to be outdone. Any other power would have been easily slain by the creation energy. However, the power of these connate divine beasts was the same as the power of creation. They were all connate powers, and there was no difference in strength between them. They were all the strongest powers in the world. The two forces collided and were evenly matched for a moment. This was the best outcome for Chu Fengmian. Only when they were evenly matched would he be able to establish a second life source. This confrontation was the best opportunity for Chu Fengmian to open a second life source. Solitary Yin does not give birth, solitary Yang does not give birth, and solitary Yang does not give birth. Therefore, heaven and earth are compatible with Yin and Yang. Life creation. Second origin. Boom. Behind Chu Fengmian, an ancient dragon-shaped shadow suddenly condensed. This ancient dragon-shaped shadow was not the usual primordial war dragon. The power it contained was many times more honorable than the primordial war dragon. The ancestor of all dragons, progenitor Tianlong. The second origin was condensed in an instant. Progenitor Tianlong's power was injected into Chu Fengmian's body. Just like the natal sword origin, it became Chu Fengmian's origin. Chu Fengmian felt his power soar crazily in an instant. Although Chu Fengmian's cultivation base hadn't changed, his strength had increased several times. Although progenitor Tianlong's power was enough for Chu Fengmian to borrow, it was still an external power after all. Now that progenitor Tianlong's power was injected into his origin, progenitor Tianlong's power completely belonged to Chu Fengmian. Even if progenitor Tianlong came back to life, he wouldn't be able to seize this strand of power from Chu Fengmian's body. This strand of power completely belonged to Chu Fengmian. Is this the power of a second life source? It feels even better than the first time I condensed a life source. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but sigh when he felt the power in his body. For any martialist, condensing a life source for the first time was a qualitative change in their power. Condensing a second life source was also a qualitative change for Chu Fengmian's power. Chu Fengmian felt that after condensing progenitor Tianlong's power into his life source, the primordial war dragon's power had changed. The 300 magic formations in the ancient war dragon's silhouette that was condensed by his fighting dragon skill suddenly underwent a drastic change. Another 700 magic formations were condensed, and a total of 1,000 magic formations were condensed. This was definitely a qualitative change for Chu Fengmian. At the same time, Chu Fengmian also felt that he could use progenitor Tianlong's power without any worries. Tianlong transformation! Chu Fengmian shouted. His body suddenly changed. A shadow condensed and revolved around Chu Fengmian's body, turning into a 10,000-meter-long dragon. This 10,000-meter-long dragon was progenitor Tianlong. When progenitor Tianlong's power was pushed to the extreme, it was enough to transform into progenitor Tianlong's appearance. Sky-ripping claw! Chu Fengmian suddenly launched a claw attack. The entire sky was torn apart. Even the toughest space was torn apart by the claw attack. This was progenitor Tianlong's true power. Progenitor Tianlong's origin power represented space. All spatial seals were meaningless in front of progenitor Tianlong. Now that Chu Fengmian had transformed into progenitor Tianlong's appearance, even if he was in a desperate situation, he could still tear apart space and escape. Even if a real sovereign attacked, Chu Fengmian wouldn't be able to seal him. This ability didn't increase Chu Fengmian's power by much, but it was enough to give Chu Fengmian another life-saving trump card. Originally, Chu Fengmian's strength was enough to fight against a quasi-emperor, and he could even escape unscathed. However, if he was targeted and chased by a real sovereign, Chu Fengmian wouldn't be able to escape even if he used all his means. Chapter 1085. Now that Chu Fengmian had condensed the power of ancestor Tianlong into the origin, it gave him a certain amount of capital. At the very least, it wouldn't be difficult for a sovereign to kill Chu Fengmian. Although Chu Fengmian's current strength was still insignificant in front of a sovereign. However, it would be impossible for a sovereign to kill Chu Fengmian. It's a pity that the power of ancestor Tianlong in your body is still too weak. You can only barely use the heaven-ripping claw to tear through space to escape. The real ancestor Tianlong could tear space to shreds and destroy a world with a single claw. Xing Xian said regretfully in Chu Fengmian's mind. The power of the real ancestor Tianlong was thousands of times stronger than what Chu Fengmian had shown. Ancestor Tianlong could easily tear the ancient monster continent apart with a single claw. Chu Fengmian was still far from being able to do that. It doesn't matter. I've condensed the power of ancestor Tianlong into the second origin. As long as I can obtain the blood of other ancestor Tianlong, I can devour it to strengthen the power of Tianlong change. Chu Fengmian said calmly after hearing Xing Xian's word. However, when Chu Fengmian thought of the hand of the Tianjian sect and the drop of ancestor Tianlong's blood essence, his eyes burned with passion. When Chu Fengmian returned to the 9 regions, the first thing he would do was kill the Tianjian sect and obtain the drop of blood essence. Obtaining a drop of ancestor Tianlong's blood essence would be enough to strengthen Chu Fengmian's Tianlong change several times over. At that time, the power of Tianlong change would not only be used to save his life. However, this time, Chu Fengmian's focus was still on the Ting serpent bloodline. As for the ancestor Tianlong bloodline, it was just a sudden thought. After testing the power of Tianlong change, Chu Fengmian retracted his power. Then, the Ting serpent suddenly flew out from his body. The phantom of the Ting serpent gradually took shape behind Chu Fengmian. Since the second origin had been opened, the integration of the Ting serpent's power was no longer as difficult as before. In less than half an hour, The phantom of the Ting serpent was almost solid behind Chu Fengmian's back. The power of the Ting serpent bloodline was also completely integrated into the second origin. Ancestor Tianlong's body and Ting serpent's body, and natal sword's body, the origin sword's origin. These three powers belong to origin sources of the origin. The origin energy would not be used normally. It would only erupt when Chu Fengmian deliberately used it. I wonder what this soaring serpent force is like. After fusing the soaring serpent's power into his source origin, Chu Fengmian was somewhat impatient to use the soaring serpent's power. Suddenly, TSS. Transformation. Boom! The phantom of the Ting serpent, which was thousands of meters long, condensed beside Chu Fengmian and strengthened his body. Surging power flowed out from the phantom of the Ting serpent and strengthened Chu Fengmian's body. The spiritual power was as boundless as the ocean. The innate divine beast, the Ting serpent, represented the power of the earth. It was said that the Ting serpent's power wasn't the strongest among the innate divine beasts, but it was the strongest. It contained the power of the earth and was simply endless. No one had ever defeated the Ting serpent. Now that the Ting serpent's power had strengthened Chu Fengmian, he felt that his spiritual power had increased by more than 10 times. Each and every one of his movements contained an immense amount of power. Sure enough, the Ting serpent's power is most suitable for battle. Fortunately, the Hua clan's young master hasn't awakened. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for me to defeat him. Chu Fengmian secretly rejoiced when he felt the strength of the Ting serpent's power. Such a strong power was much stronger than any demon god. The Ting serpent's power can last for a minute. However, during this minute, my power is no less than a quasi-emperor's. The Ting serpent's power was being consumed every moment. Chu Fengmian felt that he could only maintain the Ting serpent's power for a minute in a day. After all, Chu Fengmian didn't have much of the Ting serpent's bloodline. It was good enough that he could maintain it for a minute. For example, the Tianlong transformation's power was only enough for Chu Fengmian to activate it once. It would disappear in an instant. Unless Chu Fengmian obtained more Ting serpent's bloodline and ancestor Tianlong's bloodline, it would be enough to prolong the activation time. However, during this minute, Chu Fengmian was on the same level as a quasi-emperor. In terms of strength, he was even stronger than a quasi-emperor. This was enough for Chu Fengmian. When Chu Fengmian broke through to the celestial realm, his strength would improve further. If he used the Ting serpent's transformation, he might be able to contend with a real sovereign. With these 2 more transformations, it would be enough for me to have 2 more trump cards. It would be much easier for me to move unhindered in the ancient monster continent. If I go to the imperial capital now, even a quasi-emperor from the Hua family won't be able to kill me. Chu Fengmian thought to himself. At the same time, Chu Fengmian felt that countless conveyance lights were suddenly rushing toward this mountain range. It seems that I've caused a bit too much of a commotion. After condensing the second origin, Chu Fengmian's spiritual power fluctuations were enough to spread throughout the desolate realm. It was no wonder that so many experts were rushing over. Chu Fengmian felt that there were hundreds of ancestors rushing over. There were dozens of emperors and as many as 6 immortal realm ancestors. It seemed that all the nearby experts had arrived. Not long after, hundreds of cultivators arrived at the desolate mountain range. These martialists were all wearing the same yellow clothes. It seemed like all of them were from the same force. What a powerful spiritual power fluctuation! There shouldn't be any experts in this mountain range. What on earth is it? It seems that it's not the birth of a natural treasure, but a breakthrough of an expert. But this aura is extremely unfamiliar. I wonder who it is. No matter who it is, since it dares to cause such a big commotion in the territory of our desolate realm alliance, we must bring it here and judge it. A middle-aged man, who seemed to be the leader of this group, said coldly. His eyes flickered. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.